Oh, hey, everybody. I didn't see you there. I tell you, this break was a long time coming. We appreciate your patience. And now that we're both refreshed, we are so excited to welcome you to Adapter Parish, episode 118, The Three Musketeers. We'll be diving into this mega episode in just a moment, but first, let me tell you a little bit about the show in general, and then tell you about our next episode. If you've been following us online these past few weeks, you'll have heard all of this already, but just in case you haven't, I have a few announcements. In the last year, it's become clear to us that something would have to change with the show in order for us to continue working on it. Between taking care of our awesome kid and working at our full-time day jobs, keeping to our fortnightly schedule was getting to be a challenge. We missed a few episodes, some things slipped, we had to take a break, so we're going to be making some changes going forward. First, we're moving to a monthly schedule. You can expect a new episode on the first Tuesday of every month, starting with this episode. Second, we've always kind of alternated between big episodes like Pride and Prejudice, Wuthering Heights, Murder on the Orient Express, to name a few, and small episodes like Bedazzled and Angels in the Outfield. We basically realized that the big episodes are the ones we love the most, so those are the only ones we're doing going forward. We've already got the next 6 months planned out, including some topics that have been heavily requested and some we've been wanting to do since the show started. Speaking of which, I'm excited to tell you that our next episode will be a follow-up to our last episode on Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot, where we will be looking at Death on the Nile and its 3 major adaptations. That'll be out on Tuesday, October 4th. Third, a bunch of little things will be changing. For example, no more two-parters. With a monthly show, we felt that if an episode needed to be long, it's going to be long. Today's episode is a perfect example of that. If we do any year-end spectaculars, there'll be shorter bonus episodes. With only 12 or so episodes a year, we want every one of them to count. Finally, we've got new artwork. If the show's going to adapt, so should our look. This October marks 5 years since Ari and I started Adapter Parish. Our lives are in a very different place now than they were when we released our first episode, but we want to keep it going, and we can't wait for you to hear what we've got planned. Thank you all so much for listening, and again, thank you for your patience. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections about today's episode or any others that you'd like to hear on the show, remember to email adapterparishcast@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, we'd love it if you would share that with the world by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. We're also on Patreon at patreon.com/adaptcast. We've got a patron-only community and our monthly bonus show, Adapter Parish Plus, with episodes releasing between episodes of this show. We hope you check it out. Show notes from this and all other episodes can be found at adapterparishcast.com. And with that, on with the show, Adapter Parish, episode 118, The Three Musketeers. Hello and welcome to Adapter Parish, a podcast about adaptation. I'm Jeremy Latour. This is literally take 3.
I'm Ari Lipshaw, and I'm just not sure what to do with my hands right now.
We have forgotten how to do this.
That's fine.
Like, in all seriousness.
Let's just lean into it.
This is our third try at starting the episode.
The second try was because I got my own name wrong.
The first one was just because we did some banter and we both agreed this is bad. This is not great banter.
We were like, now that we've shaken the cobwebs off, let's start again and do it right. And the cobwebs are still there. My name was not right.
Hey, what are we talking about this episode?
We're talking about the Three Musketeers. There's a lot. I don't know. Do we want to take 2 seconds to bring people up to speed on where we are in the world?
I think so, because I'm just imagining in the future, if anyone is downloading our back catalog and they finish episode 117 and they start episode 118 and they're like, why do they sound so weird?
Why are they weird? What is going on?
I mean, they'll have heard the intro, so obviously I explain a whole bunch of the stuff in the intro. But yeah.
We took the summer off.
Mm-hmm.
We're back now. We have been working on this episode for a while. I mean, we've been reading The Three Musketeers since the beginning of the year.
Yep.
Because it's very long. No, nothing like big or major changes to report. Like, we still live in the same place and we still have the same jobs as when last we spoke.
Mm-hmm.
And we still have the same kid. He's great. Dog.
Still dead.
Dog's still dead. We took the summer off. I think it was a good break. You, of course, have been doing your other podcast the whole time. We've done
Yeah,
one or two.
if you haven't listened to Multiplex Time Machine and you're interested, do go for it.
Yeah. We've done one or two bonus shows. And yeah, I mean, I think I will just sum it up by saying, like, when we took the break, there was sort of a little bit of a fear in both of our hearts that we, or maybe more specifically me,
Maybe.
would be like, this is great. Not having to do this is great. And I want to continue not doing it. The hole that it left in my life has filled up with other stuff. And it did feel that way for a little while. And then at one point I was like, you know what? I'm ready. Let's start watching Three Musketeers. Then about halfway through watching Three Musketeers, I was like, I'm excited to talk about this with you. And here we are. And I think Jeremy, I think in the intro will have explained the new schedule and the new kind of focus of the show. I think that's really good. And I think this will be really good and sustainable for an indefinite period of time. Did you have anything you wanted to say?
Nope.
Great.
I'm excited to be back.
Good to be back.
I mean, let's just get into it. Like the banter's done. Let's get back to down to brass tacks.
Yeah.
Let's get back to the reason why we are here
Mm-hmm.
to talk about and analyze adaptations.
Yes.
The Three Musketeers. What I read on my summer vacation. I literally feel like I'm doing a book report on the first week of school.
Yeah.
Who's doing the plot synopsis for this one?
You are. Do you want me to say why?
Would you like to say why?
I forgot everything about it. Well, I mean, so I think the next time we read a really long book, like a 900 plus page book, we need to do it like we did Les Mis, which is we're both reading the same chapters on the same days to kind of keep each other accountable.
Yes, we should.
The way that we did this is we both started it like back at the beginning of the year. I took a long pause, in which time you finished the book. And then when we realized we had to kind of get going with it, I like picked it back up and finished it. But like I didn't really remember much that had happened up until that point.
Well,
And
you were
so
worried you didn't remember that much
I
of
was
it.
worried I didn't remember. I will say in my own defense, I had said to you, I was a little bit worried that I didn't remember specific things that had happened because we were watching things and I was like, oh, did that happen in the book? And you were like, yes. Could you, for God's sake, could you please read the Cliffs Notes before we start recording? But I did sit down and read, I didn't read the Cliffs Notes, but I did sit down and read the Wikipedia summary, which is quite lengthy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, I guess one would hope after seeing like 13 versions or however many we watched that I would be like conversant with the plot of
It
the
was
Three
10.
Musketeers.
Don't oversell it. And some of them have nothing to do with the plot of the Three Musketeers.
I was pleased to see that of the like, I don't know, 8 to 10 paragraphs of plot on the Wikipedia page, I was like, oh, I could have told you all of these plot points. Like, I guess maybe I wouldn't have remembered every single one to just rattle them off from memory, but like this has the ring of familiarity to it. So I feel like this is what you get. You get this is what you get when you hire me. You get someone that doesn't remember things very, very well. And yeah, that's what it is.
What do you think the familiarity is that our audience has with the book The Three Musketeers? And not necessarily our audience, but people in general. Like, I feel like if you were going to go out, especially people of our generation, and be like, The Three Musketeers, tell me what you know of it, people would be like, well, there's the song that Bryan Adams wrote.
Yeah.
That he sang with Sting and Rod Stewart.
Yeah, I don't know that I know many people who have read the original book, Three Musketeers. I could be wrong. I don't know. I think it's that sort of genre of adventure story that I think used to be very, very popular.
Yeah.
But I don't know that the kids these days are into Three Musketeers.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to be kind of going through this episode assuming that a lot of people have not read the book, which it might end up being unfair.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to let people know, if you think it's unfair, know that I'm open to that, and I feel bad about it.
Yeah.
But it really does seem like the book itself is not really the thing that people go to immediately when they think of The Three Musketeers.
Yes.
Usually I feel like if you were to walk into a room and be like, The Three Musketeers, everybody start talking about it. Like, most people would start talking about something other than the book.
Well, most people of our generation would immediately go,
and it's all for one and all for love. Yeah, they probably would.
Yeah. I will say, we got a very, very sweet email just a couple weeks ago from a listener. And we were like deep in Three Musketeers at this point. Like we were like almost done with watching everything and we'd already read the book and we were like ready to go. And this person just very sweetly was like, hey, I had a great idea. You know, it would be great for the show. You should do some Dumas. You should do Three Musketeers or Count of Monte Cristo. And I was like, you're going to be really happy.
Yeah. That's the first time we've actually mentioned Dumas
Yeah.
so far in this Three Musketeers episode. The Three Musketeers was a book that I read on my summer vacation. It was written by Alexandre Dumas.
Junior?
No, wasn't it Alexandre Dumas père?
I thought you were supposed to do this research.
Why did you even bring it up?
I don't
wasn't
know.
even going to bring it up.
I don't know.
Now we both look dumb. It was serialized for March to July 1884 in Le Siècle. I read Alexandre Dumas' The Three Musketeers. I think it is a very good book.
Would you like to give a summary of the basic plot?
Here's what I thought we could do.
Yes.
I have a summary.
Yeah.
My worry is it's a little light.
Okay.
So I've broken it up into bullets.
Okay.
I'm thinking maybe I give my bullets and then you can fill in the cracks.
Okay.
If you feel like this is boring and a little dry, I'm gonna put some butter on it. I'm gonna put some salt on it.
Okay.
Make it taste a little bit better. How do you
Okay.
feel about that?
Well, because this is a work of historical fiction, I have done a modicum of research.
Mhm.
And I thought maybe I could give you a little bit of color before you give the plot summary so that we would all know who these people are and just give a little bit of an intro to them before you do the plot.
What's happening? What's happening right now? Am I stepping into Ari's History Corner?
I should have come up with a theme song.
You should have.
Okay. This is Ari's History Corner. Quick disclaimer, I did some research and I stopped when I thought I had enough. So
Like, don't
if
anyone
any of this is wrong, just don't at me.
Like, I feel like just that idea of having like some crusty guy sitting in front of a wall of bookshelves talking to you about the thing that you're about to watch. Ari's History Corner doesn't look like that. It doesn't look like the library in Beauty and the Beast.
Mm-mm.
Ari's History Corner has like some it has some succulents and a bag of knitting and a laptop
That is
open to Wikipedia.
That's really generous. I was thinking what you were going to say was it looks like a board, like the thing from It's Always Sunny with the board with like the red string everywhere and like a person with like a wild look in their eyes.
I don't know. That implies that you put a lot of thought into the
Yeah.
things you're going to talk about.
Okay.
I thought you were going to say it's generous because you've managed to kill all your succulents.
I did. I asked you to get me the Lego succulents because I managed to kill all the real ones.
Yep.
From either under or overwatering, not sure.
Tell us about the history.
Okay. The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas, as you said, was serialized in the late 1800s, set in the general range of years 1625 to 1628-ish, okay? So in France. The Musketeers were a real company of soldiers founded to protect the king. So if you've seen any version of Three Musketeers, you will know this. They were founded for Louis XIII in 1622. So when the events of this book happened, the Musketeers had only just been founded 3 years before. So any version that you might see that's like, oh, my father was a musketeer, not so.
No.
They were only founded 3 years, but this is like a new thing.
Like in any real version, if D'Artagnan said to the other musketeers, I want to be a musketeer because my father was a musketeer, they'd
No.
be like, your father's full of shit,
Yeah.
and he has been lying to you.
Or any version that referenced the Musketeers protecting the previous king, also not
Or
the case.
failing to
Or
protect the
well,
previous
I'm going to
king.
get there in a second. Okay.
Yeah.
There was a real Cardinal Richelieu. I'm not going to get into like all the court intrigue. There was court intrigue both from Cardinal Richelieu and his successor Cardinal Mazarin, but we'll save that for another day. The fact of the matter, the
What
important
other
thing,
day would we talk about that?
never. The important thing to note is that the Cardinal Richelieu, once the king founded his musketeers, the cardinal just got jealous, and he did in fact have a set of competing musketeers that were called the Cardinal's Musketeers. In most versions that we've seen, they were, I think, to eliminate confusion, they're called like the Cardinal's Guards or
Mhm.
something like that. Usually, I don't think in any version we had the Musketeers and the Musketeers.
No.
So the Musketeers as a company lasted for well over 100 years. They were first disbanded in 1776, and then they were like sort of rebanded after the French Revolution, and then disbanded again, and then
Something we
rebanded
learned,
again.
by the way, during the Les Mis episode.
There's
Which French
the
Revolution?
later one, the late 1700s one, and then disbanded finally in 1816 for the last time. So they were going for like several hundred years, which is cool, nearly 200 years. And so again, any version that's like the Musketeers have been disbanded, not true. They literally had just been formed like 3 years before and lasted for almost 200 years. Here are some names of people who were real musketeers.
Mhm.
I don't know if this will sound familiar to anyone who's familiar with the Three Musketeers. D'Artagnan, Daramitz, Porthos, Dathos, and Toisville, all real people.
Mhm.
But the most famous musketeer in history, do you know who that was?
No.
General Marquis de Lafayette
Oh, wow.
was a musketeer.
Oh, holy shit.
Lafayette is taking his horse by the reins through the red coats littered with bloodstains. Lafayette, that one. He was a musketeer.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. No, I know
We're
that.
going to get a copyright claim.
No, we're not.
Just a couple of notes about the king,
Mhm.
Louis XIII, who factors into this
Yep.
heavily, as does his wife, Anne d'Autrice, or Anne of Austria. Louis XIII was, in fact, a boy king. He was born in 1601. He came to the throne in 1610 at the age of 9 after his father, Henri IV, was assassinated. It was not the Musketeers' fault because they didn't exist then. I got confused because I was like, there was some version where it was like, oh, the king was assassinated, so the Musketeers clearly failed. I was like, his father, he wasn't assassinated. And I, in my mind, thinking that the father of Louis XIII was Louis XII.
Well, I mean, a lot of people would think that's how that works.
As anyone would, went and looked up what Louis XII died of, and I was like, aha, he wasn't assassinated. He died of gout. But he was not Louis XIII's father.
You turned to me while we were watching one because you had been frantically wikiing while we were watching it, and you're like, he died of gout, and you were so proud of yourself until one day, a week later, you're like,
I was wrong about something.
Louis XII is not the father of Louis XIII.
Yeah.
I'm very embarrassed. Don't tell anyone about this conversation, please.
Yeah, but the whole cycle would repeat itself because Louis XIII died at age 42, leaving a boy son who became the boy king, and his wife Anne of Austria was the whatever they call it, not the ward, like the
Queen Regent.
yeah, something like that.
I literally might just be pulling that from Game of Thrones.
You're pulling that from Game of Thrones. Anne of Austria, also a character, arguably a more major character in the book, The Three Musketeers, than Louis the King. Same age as Louis XIII. She was also born in 1601. They wed in 1615. They were both 14. She was the oldest daughter of Philip of Spain, but the reason she was called Anne of Austria was because her mother was Margaret of Austria. So they were married at 14. It was thought that the marriage was not consummated for like 4 years. They did eventually consummate it when they were like 18, which is
thank God for that.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Not through it's not really a thank God for that situation. Apparently there was great pressure on them to produce an heir, but Louis was like, I don't want to.
No, that's what I'm saying. Thank God for that.
Yeah. He was just not really very interested in his wife by all accounts. They remained childless. This is fascinating. They remained childless for like 19 years. And then she apparently basically, I don't know exactly what happened because I wasn't there, but like she then had 2 children like in rapid succession at age like 37 and 38, even though she'd been married since she was 14.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. And survived their births and lived to reign for them because her oldest son became king. Anyway,
which is not nothing in the 1600s.
Not nothing. Well, I just want to talk really quickly about Anne of Austria's mother, and I hope this makes the final cut because I find it's nothing to do with the book. I just find it so interesting. So I've been watching this great YouTube channel recently called History Tea Time with Lindsay Holiday. I think that's what it is, and she's great. And she does these very well researched, very educational YouTube videos, but a lot of them are about like royal lineage and monarchy and stuff like that. So I was watching a whole thing about like the Bourbons and the Habsburgs and the Spanish royalty, and like it was about how they were all inbred. It was really, really interesting. But anyway, Margaret of Austria was the mother of Anne of Austria. So she married Philip of Spain, who was her first cousin once removed.
Mm-hmm.
So not only was he her first cousin, he was like her father's generation.
Okay.
So very much older than herself.
Gross.
Married her first cousin. She was 15. She died at 26, giving birth to her 8th child.
Yeah.
And that's how it went down. So Anne of Austria probably
know,
lucky she didn't have any kids until she was in her late 30s.
Sweetie, it was a simpler time.
It was simpler. Some might argue a better time. Some might.
Some might.
Not me.
Yeah, no, not us.
Not us.
Fuck that.
All right.
What?
So that was dun dun dun. Ari's History Corner. The end.
Yep.
Would you like to give a plot summary now that we have a little bit of background on the real historical characters that make up this work of historical fiction?
Yep. All right. So here are the basic bones. You fill in the color as you see fit. There's a young man named D'Artagnan who lives in Gascony in France. He wants to be a musketeer, so he sets off for Paris. But he's a poor lad, but he's got a sword and a temper.
And a letter.
Yes, he has a very important letter for Monsieur Treville,
Yes.
who is the head of the Musketeers, from his father, who
was not a musketeer. But knows people in Paris.
Yeah, anyway. He, along his journey to Paris, has an altercation, and he meets 2 people.
In Ming.
Mm-hmm. He meets a guy named Rochefort, and he witnesses Rochefort talking to this very pretty lady called Milady de Winter.
He doesn't know either of their names at this
Nope.
time.
But Rochefort makes him super mad, and D'Artagnan has a temper, and Rochefort embarrasses him and then leaves.
Mhm.
And so D'Artagnan makes his way to Paris, very mad at this person, but also still determined to give this letter to Monsieur Treville and become a musketeer.
Yes.
But now he has a nemesis. He didn't have a nemesis when he left Gascony, but now he does, which is nice for him.
He didn't have a nemesis, and he did have a letter, which he no longer has.
Yeah, that's right. Rochefort took his letter. Yeah, this is the flavor I'm talking about. Thank you for reminding me
There
of
you
that.
go.
So he gets to Paris, and he meets Treville. And Treville's basically like, you're not going to be a musketeer. I can't just make you a musketeer. That's not how this works. You could be a King's Guard.
Not without a letter, God forbid.
Yeah, that's right. I know you say you had one, and I respect that, but you don't have it now. He also meets 3 musketeers, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis. He insults all of them, and in rapid succession is challenged to 3 duels. And so he has to meet all of them behind the Luxembourg?
Yeah, where we've been.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
was
yeah,
also
yeah.
in Les Mis.
Right, yeah. He goes and starts to fight, but they are immediately stopped by some of the Cardinal's guards because dueling is outlawed.
Yes.
Immediately, they band together as 4 swords against all of these Cardinal's guards and beat them up and kill some of them.
Yep.
And now they are friends.
Yes.
And the duels are over.
His moxie has been admired.
Mhm.
They are now friends.
I don't know when to say this. Do you feel like this is color? These 4 glorious idiots. I love them so much. These 4 absolute fucking idiots. They're
Yeah.
so great.
Should we just give them each like 1 sentence character?
D'Artagnan.
Young, dumb, and full of full of spunk.
Okay.
Porthos,
Oh, man, what a dandy.
a dandy.
Just a giant, beautiful dandy.
Loves eating and drinking and rich widows.
Mhm.
Or rich married
Well,
women.
Soon to be
Soon to
widows.
be
He's
widows.
hoping.
Rich pre-widows.
Yeah. They call those wives.
Yeah.
But vain. Porthos is very vain.
Porthos is very vain.
Mhm.
Aramis, very religious, keeps saying he wants to be a priest, and then they're like, "Do you really want to be a priest and give up all these things that you like?" And he's like, "No,
What are
not
the-
really.
What are the things he likes?
Wine, women, and song."
There it is.
Yeah.
Wine, women, and violence, I
Yeah.
would say. He's very popular with the ladies.
Very popular with the ladies. And then Athos, again, likes to drink, has a dark secret,
He's-
kind of mysterious.
He's a tragic backstory.
Tragic backstory.
He's the least dumb idiot of
Yeah.
the 4 of them, but even he is a beautiful dumb idiot.
Yeah.
The way that they are, and I love him for it. But he's the least dumb of the
Yeah.
4 idiots.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, there's these 4 friends always together.
Yep. As a result of this entire altercation, the king is like, I like you. You all have you just stop making trouble, but I also like that you kicked their butts. So here's a bunch of money. So now D'Artagnan has money. So he hires a servant. They all have servants.
They all have servants.
I don't know if we need to say all their names at this point. The most important one is Planchet,
Yes.
who is D'Artagnan's servant.
Right.
And he rents a room from a guy named Monsieur Bonacieux. Anything you want to add?
Monsieur Bonacieux has a very lovely young wife. No one quite knows why. And she mostly lives at the palace because she is a lady in waiting to the queen.
Now here's the problem. D'Artagnan falls in love with Bonacieux's wife, Constance.
Yes.
Immediately. And then she gets him involved in a love affair between Queen Anne and the Duke of Buckingham.
Yes.
And
Who is a real person.
he was absolutely a real person. And England and France were not doing so great at that time.
Mhm.
A lot of people were worried that they were going to go to war. So this was not a great thing to be happening. And I say love affair. Buckingham is deeply in love with Queen Anne.
Yes.
She is not deeply in love, but he's deeply, deeply interested in possibly being in love with him.
Yes.
Would you say?
I would say. Also, this is not based in any historical fact or speculation.
No. I mean, that's the problem with talking about all this stuff, like with these real people. Like,
Yeah.
this is all bullshit.
Oh, well, I mean, wait till we get to the Buckingham thing. Like,
Yeah,
this is fascinating what
right,
he did in this
yeah.
work of historical fiction.
Are you
Yes.
saying we're not done with Ari's History Corner?
We're not quite done.
We've got 1 foot. We got 1 foot there. That's where we're recording from
All
right now.
Keep going.
So, D'Artagnan helps Constance get Buckingham to the palace to meet the queen. The queen gives Buckingham a token.
Yes.
Now, you're going to have to help me here because it's been literally different in every single version that we've watched.
Literally, the thing that she gives him in all 13 versions is not the same.
10 versions.
10 versions.
She has 12 diamond studs that she got from the king.
Yes.
She gives Buckingham All of them.
2 of them.
6 of them.
2 of them.
4 of them.
Only 2.
None of them.
Merely 2.
She gives him 2 of these diamonds as a token.
Yes.
And he says, I love you, and leaves.
I love you,
Yeah.
darling.
So she leaves.
Yes.
Now we have
No,
reached...
He leaves.
Well, they both leave the room.
Everybody leaves.
Everybody leaves.
Everyone goes home. The end.
Now we have reached the big thing that happens in the middle of this book. And it's the thing, if you've only seen some versions of the Three Musketeers in a movie, you would think, oh, well, this is the entire plot, the diamonds. That's what Three Musketeers is all about. It's like, yeah, the first half of the book is all about diamonds.
Yeah.
So then we get into the whole diamonds plot. So Cardinal Richelieu hatches a plan because he knows about everything that happens all the time. And his plan is to... have them go to war with England, but he wants to be in control of everything.
Yep.
He just wants to be in control. So what he does is he sends Milady de Winter
Yep.
to England
Yep.
to steal the 2 diamonds from Buckingham.
Mm-hmm.
Then he convinces the king to hold a ball wherein he will tell his wife, the queen, that she must wear all 12 of the diamonds that he gave her.
Yep.
Richelieu, at the ball, will say to the king, see how she's only got 10? It's because she gave the other 2 to Buckingham.
And here they are.
Here they are as well. And she's been canoodling behind your back.
Right.
And the king
Will be mad.
will
and
be mad
have
because
a
he
war.
is the king. The king is a dumb, petty person. This book is full of beautiful idiots.
Yes.
Like, there's very few people who aren't stupid. Basically, I think the only 2 characters who are not stupid in this entire book, Richelieu and Treville. That's my pitch for the only people who are not dumb.
And Richelieu makes a pretty stupid mistake, which we'll come to
Yes.
at the end.
Okay. So now we get to our big action thing. The Musketeers need to get back the diamonds from England.
Yes.
Constance comes to D'Artagnan, says, you must help me. He goes to Treville, and Treville says, well, you're never going to get there on your own, so take the other guys with you.
Yep.
So the 4 of them set out. He's the only one who makes it.
They just like drop off one by the side of the road, doing different battles, which is like 200 pages of the book, but really all you need to know is D'Artagnan and Planchet eventually make it to England.
Yeah. And our other boys are fine.
Yeah.
We find out later.
Yes.
He gets to England. He goes to Buckingham, and he says, blah, blah, blah. The queen gave you those 2 diamonds, but you could give them back because she's fucked. She's in a lot of trouble if she doesn't have those diamonds right now. And he goes, yes, I will get them for you. And he opens the drawer and goes,
Shit.
What? And he's thinking, Milady, because he knows exactly how he lost the diamonds.
Boned Milady.
Yeah, I love how in the book it's implied, and I like that in some of the versions they fully embrace it and go like, no, he was boning her, and then she stole the diamonds.
Yes.
He, because he is rich, gets one of his guys to make 2 more.
Yeah.
Because they're irreplaceable
Yeah.
unless you're the Duke of Buckingham.
Yeah.
And he makes 2 more, gives them to D'Artagnan, and D'Artagnan makes his way back to the palace. There's a whole bunch of intrigue. Is he going to make it? Is he going to make it? He makes it. And he gets the diamonds to the queen, and she appears at the party. And Richelieu's like, well, she doesn't have 2 of them.
Aha.
And she's like, what are you talking about? I have 12 of them. Ah, now I have 14. That's so nice
Thank
of
you, Cardinal. What a
Yeah.
sweet, kind gift that you've given me. Now I have these 14 diamonds.
And I just want to give this as an example of something that I'm going to throw out there right now. I am not prepared to give an entire top 5, but I will say that one person who would appear on my top 5 literary villains of all time, Cardinal Richelieu.
Mhm.
Because what a terrifyingly intelligent person who can just roll with anything that happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing you have to admire about him is like when things don't go his way, he's just like, well, I'll get
Yeah.
it next time.
Like, he is the last person in the world who would ever be like, curses, foiled again. I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for D'Artagnan and his 3 friends. He would never do that because the thing he would say is, I didn't do anything. This is all exactly what I wanted to happen.
Yeah.
But he immediately pivots and says, I wanted to give you 2 more, but I was embarrassed to do it, so I came up with this story to have the king give them to you.
Yes.
I'm very sorry.
I believe that is what happens.
And that is a scary, smart guy.
Yep.
Richelieu terrifies me.
Yes. And if you, like me, had only ever seen the 1993 version, the Disney version, and are like,
Did you want to say classic? It seemed like you wanted to say classic.
I was gonna say best version, but I
Just
wasn't
do it.
quite willing to go there.
Do it. Sweetie, the
and-
heart wants what the heart wants.
And been like, what are you talking about? There's not a shred of a diamond in that film sort of bafflingly, that was the major plot point that they chose not to include.
So let me continue. Everybody's good. The Musketeers got a lot of money. D'Artagnan's doing really good. He's in the Queen's, good graces and everything. Constance is kidnapped.
For the second time.
Yep, Richelieu kidnaps her. But D'Artagnan forgets about her like immediately and falls in love with Milady.
There it is.
Okay,
and also sort of her servant.
Well, no, he's never in love with Kitty. Kitty's in love with him.
Yeah,
that's why she's helping him get through to Milady.
I'm just saying he's boning all of them.
Well, yeah, obviously. D'Artagnan's a beautiful, sexy idiot.
Yeah.
That's the thing I kind of love about it, is that the book is going like, he is our hero. By the way, this lady that you all like, he has forgotten about her completely, but I want you to still be invested in him as a main character. And I feel like the reason that works for me is because this book is very funny.
Yeah.
And I don't think should be taken very seriously. I think the danger would be to take it too seriously, because if you take it too seriously, then D'Artagnan's a terrible person.
Yeah.
But if you don't take it seriously, D'Artagnan's just an idiot who's fun to read about.
Yeah.
While he's canoodling with Milady, he discovers her fleur-de-lis. She has a brand on her shoulder. At this point, he has been told a story by Athos about this lady that someone, not me, a friend of mine, was married to. And he thought she was great. And then he found out that she had been branded with a fleur-de-lis on her shoulder, which means that she was a criminal. What does it mean?
I think it means that you were supposed to be condemned to death.
Yeah.
And then you weren't somehow.
Unclear. It's a bad thing.
Very unclear. This is a bad thing. She did a bad thing.
Yeah.
And
then
he's
my friend
maybe killed her?
Maybe killed her, who is not me. Anyway, we'll come back to all this stuff when it shows up in all the different versions. He discovers that Milady has a fleur-de-lis, and naked he escapes from her apartment right after she tries to kill him.
Yeah.
Because he's also pretended to be the guy she's really into.
Yeah.
Because it was dark and pretending to be. It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. Let's
Okay.
not get into it.
Then we get to the whole second half of the book. And the second half of the book is all of the Musketeers, including D'Artagnan, have been ordered to go to the siege of La Rochelle. So the city of La Rochelle has been taken over by Protestant revolutionaries, and who are being supported by the British and Buckingham. And the king and Richelieu were like, fuck these guys. We need to go show them what for. And also Protestants. Blah. The Musketeers all go as part of the Musketeers. D'Artagnan goes as part of the King's Guard. And they all do a bunch of fighting there. And there's a whole bunch of stuff. Milady wants to kill D'Artagnan to get revenge on him for exposing her and for lying to her and sleeping with her when she thought he was someone else. This is like a whole thing.
It's a whole thing.
The Cardinal has a new plan where he is going to send Milady to England to kill Buckingham.
Yes.
The Musketeers discover the plot. They stop her. They warn Buckingham about what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
She still goes, but immediately upon reaching England, she is thrown into jail.
Yeah, it's in a bad way.
So it's not looking good for Milady.
Yeah.
And it would be very bad for her if she wasn't incredibly smart and super evil.
She's not in jail. She is in her...
She's imprisoned.
She's imprisoned in her former brother-in-law's house.
Well, he's her current brother-in-law. It's just that her husband's dead.
It's just that her husband's dead.
He doesn't stop being a brother-in-law.
Sure he does. Sure. I don't think he would claim her. But yes, so there is no love lost between them because he's sort of suspicious that maybe she killed his brother a little bit. And so he has her basically under guard and lock and key. And unclear what his intention is to do with her. I think that is a little bit vague.
I mean, part of it is keep her prisoner long enough that everything can go off the way it's supposed to.
Sure.
Yeah.
He makes one fatal error.
So he's got this guard named Felton, and he says to Felton, guard her and don't listen to her or do anything like that.
He says to him, she will try to seduce you to get away. Don't do that. Also, hey, did you know that this guy is a strong Puritan and your feminine wiles hold nothing for him.
So she does seduce him, but she seduces him in a different way. She convinces him that she is also a Puritan and is being persecuted.
Yeah.
And his heart goes out to her.
And so does his dongle.
I mean, they don't do it. Do they do it?
Yeah.
I didn't think so.
A little bit.
Either way, it doesn't really matter.
They do some stuff.
She convinces him to kill Buckingham.
Yes.
So in this book, that is a very inaccurate portrayal of history. This rando character named Felton kills the Duke of Buckingham.
Now, what happened to we're going back to History Corner. What happened to the real life Duke of Buckingham?
My understanding was he died of gout.
He died of murders.
Oh, who murdered him?
A guy named Felton.
Now, were the circumstances the same?
No. No, it's like disgruntled.
I did. So I know this isn't Jeremy's History Corner, it's Ari's History Corner, but can I just give one little piece of information that I did find in my limited research?
Mm-hmm.
I just loved finding out that Buckingham, deeply unpopular.
Yeah.
Like everyone in England hated him. So the fact that he got assassinated by this guy Felton surprised no one. And that's never in any of these, ever, because Buckingham's not the main character. It's not really that important. But if you were making a story about this from England's perspective, Buckingham's the bad guy, and it's good that he died.
Yeah. What happens next?
Milady makes her way back to France, and along her road back to Paris, hides in a convent, wherein she discovers Constance.
What a coincidence, by the way! Like of all the convents in France, there must be thousands of them.
Mm-hmm.
Of all the Jesuits in all the convents in all of France, you had to stumble into mine.
Okay, so Constance has been moved several times. She was imprisoned by the cardinal, but the Musketeers found out about it and they rescued. So now she's being held safely here, she thinks. And she befriends this nice lady who just came there, which is really nice. And when Milady finds out who she is, she's like, oh, right, the thing I want more than anything is revenge on D'Artagnan. And this is his lover, Constance.
Right, because Constance is like, my friend, my beautiful D'Artagnan's coming for me any day, any moment. D'Artagnan, And Milady's like, D'Artagnan, you say?
Yeah, so Milady poisons her and she dies.
She dies.
Constance dies. She does not make it.
Bites it.
Which is like not a very Hollywood ending.
No.
Not Hollywood at all.
She died pretty horribly in a lot of these adaptations. It was pickle to watch.
Except for the ones where she and D'Artagnan have a happy ending.
Yeah, well, there's not as many of those.
Okay. The Musketeers get there. D'Artagnan is mad and sad. Athos is mad and sad. Aramis and Porthos are present. And what they decide to do is they decide to take her into custody, put her on trial, sentence her to death, hire an executioner.
Who has beef? The
executioner's story goes back to Athos' story with her when they were married. Oh, just in case any of you were like, wait a minute, I thought you said it was Athos' friend. Oh, that's so sweet that you would think that. It was Athos the whole time.
Yeah.
Turns out the executioner also has beef that goes way back, so he cuts her head off.
Yeah.
They return to the siege of La Rochelle. D'Artagnan goes to talk to the cardinal. There's this thing that's happened along the way where the cardinal wrote Milady basically this carte blanche for, like, do whatever you want, and if you get arrested, just show them this letter that says that you did it for the good of the country, and it's signed by me, so of course you can get away with whatever you want.
Yeah.
D'Artagnan, the beautiful fucking idiot, goes, I have the letter now. Because Richelieu's like, you killed Milady? That's murder.
Yeah,
this is going to end really bad for you. And D'Artagnan's like, I have this letter, though, that says that everything I did was for the good of the country, and it's signed by you. And Richelieu's like, interesting. Can I see that for a second? And D'Artagnan's like, here! Which is the dumbest fucking thing that anyone has done in any book ever. It's like that and Ishmael getting on the Pequod. Those are the two dumbest things I've ever seen.
But Richelieu, to his credit, is like, instead of just throwing the thing in the fire and it's like, you don't have it anymore, is like, well played. Would you like to be a musketeer?
Well, no, he does tear it up.
No, he does tear it up, but he's like, well played. He's not like, all right, well, now it's torn up. No one will ever believe you.
He does have some respect for D'Artagnan. He understands that D'Artagnan is now a force he has to reckon with. He doesn't have to reckon with him that seriously, but he does have to reckon with him a little bit.
Yeah.
So he writes him a letter that basically says, like, you are going to become a lieutenant in the Musketeers. And he leaves the name blank.
Yeah.
So D'Artagnan has this cute little thing where he's like, well, I couldn't possibly do it. He goes to Athos, and Athos is like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be a lieutenant. That's not a thing. Goes to Aramis, and Aramis was like, I'm going to be a priest. I'm leaving. I'm going to do this whole thing. And Porthos is like, that lady I've been boning, her husband finally died. She's finally a widow. So now I'm going to be a rich gentleman. And so you got to do it. So the book ends with them all being friends, and D'Artagnan is now a lieutenant in the Musketeers, which is the thing he always wanted.
Hey, we got through the plot in under 45 minutes.
I know, right? And there's a bunch of sequels. If you've ever seen The Man in the Iron Mask, that's based on one of the sequels to it. These characters go on forever. I'd certainly love to do The Man in the Iron Mask at some point in the future. We're not doing it for this episode, though. So that's the book.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Did you like this book?
I like the parts that were interesting.
Okay. Which were the parts that were interesting?
The beginning and the end. There was a big section in the middle that was real boring.
Did the diamonds not do anything for you?
The diamonds were okay. I don't know. There was a lot of hijinks anytime they had to get from one place to another that I found boring. The whole thing with the Comte de Wards I thought was kind of boring.
I thought that was hilarious.
Just like the journey, any journey that they ever had to take, they kept going on all these like little side missions, and I just was not super engaged with that. But I did find the end of the book went a lot faster. Like once Milady was imprisoned and she was doing the whole thing with Felton, and when the Duke of Buckingham, like I didn't know this was coming because had not been in any version I had seen up to this point. when the Duke of Buckingham was killed, like that was a genuine surprise to me.
This thing
So
that happened in history.
So that was
Technically,
exciting.
very accurately.
Yeah, technically. So yeah, I mean, on the whole, I would say I enjoyed this book. I think it could have been 300 pages shorter. What about you?
I loved every minute of it.
Great.
It was such a fun book. It was so great. I basically felt, I wish I could say on page 7, I realized I didn't have to take it seriously. I don't know exactly what it was that happened. This was my first experience reading Dumas because I'd never read any of his stuff before. Also, I think we read a really good translation of it. And I just found it so funny. And I realized right off the bat, I didn't need to take this book seriously.
Yeah.
Which I'm not comparing it to Les Mis only because I feel like you can only compare old French books to other old French books.
I mean,
I'm just comparing it to that because I had a similar kind of thing with it, which was Les Mis is funnier than I expected it to be. But Les Mis is also really dark and really depressing, and there's a lot of really sad stuff in it. But when it's funny, it's actually really funny.
Yeah.
The Three Musketeers is the kind of thing where it's pretty much super funny throughout, except for the occasional moments where things are very serious.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I said it before, these 4 beautiful idiots were so much fun the entire time. I loved every single thing they did. Every scrape they got out of was like half because of their own guile, but also half because of pure dumb luck. And I found it really entertaining. I loved it. Like, you talk about the boring parts. I didn't think there were any. The only boring part I didn't like in the book, I thought it took Milady a really, really long time to seduce Felton into killing Buckingham.
Yeah.
That part actually dragged for me.
That's funny because I liked that part. I thought
Yeah.
that was interesting.
Super fun book.
Yeah.
So I feel like we should probably just kind of give a little preface to the versions that we are going to look at and how we picked the ones that we're going to
The
look at.
13 versions.
It's 10.
Feels like 13.
There's just 10.
3 for extra credit.
So when I started looking at all of the versions, because we've talked about this on the show so many times before, is that the thing that keeps happening to us is we decide, hey, at some point in the future, we should do this one. And we say, yeah. And there's like, hey, aren't there like 3 movies? You know, and we write those down.
Yeah.
So we assume for the next year or two that when we get to it, we'll only have to read a book and watch 3 movies.
Yep.
And then finally, when we get to it, because we've already put it on the schedule, I look and I go, oh,
There's more.
there's 27 of them. I didn't know that, and I'm very sorry, but we have to watch all of them.
Yes.
Like
yes.
Les Mis, there's a lot of Les Mis.
Yes.
You know, and with Les Mis, we had this thing happen where there weren't just English language ones.
Yeah.
There are also versions from all around the world, but especially a number of French versions.
Yes.
So with that one, we made the decision, we're going to do every English language one, and we're going to do the major French ones.
Yeah.
Because it is a very French story.
Yes.
And we think that that's important.
Yes.
Also, a lot of those versions were relatively available.
Yeah.
Of course, as soon as I started writing down all the ones we were going to have to do for this, I found out that there's a million fucking versions of the Three Musketeers. And I thought there's going to be all these animated ones. There's a Mickey Three Musketeers and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
As we started going a little bit further into it, I think we hit on a good way to look at it. One thing we decided is we're not going to do any non-English versions.
Yeah.
Even though there are some French versions of it.
There weren't any that were like super available because I was like, let's do at least a French one. Like, let's try to do a French one. And like, as far as I remember, like there weren't any that were easily available.
I couldn't find any.
Yeah.
Like through my normal channels.
Yeah.
Like, and that includes lots of ways to download and, you know, going to libraries and going to different versions of Amazon. Like, it didn't seem like there were any good ways to get access to these, certainly in a way where we could watch them, because sometimes I could get a French version, but I had no way to get English subtitles.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. Like that is, it would be unfair for us to judge an adaptation that we couldn't actually interpret. And we do not speak French well enough to watch an entire movie. I think the thing I basically found out is like Les Mis seems to be very important to the French. Three Musketeers doesn't seem to be as important to the French.
As far as we could tell.
So we didn't do any French versions. We didn't do any non-English versions. The other thing we decided was it needs to be about a young man named D'Artagnan who comes to Paris to be a musketeer and meets Athos, Porthos, and Aramis.
It has to be loosely based on the book The Three Musketeers.
Right, because there's all these sequels and everything, too. Like, the question came up, do we do The Man in the Iron Mask? Because that is also The Three Musketeers. But that's not what that story's about, so we focused on these. And there's a lot of really cool ones out there. I said it before, I want to do Man in the Iron Mask at some point, because there's a whole bunch of versions of it, but that's not what...
I mean, it's different.
That's not what this is.
It's a whole book.
Exactly.
Like, it's a different book.
Totally different book. So that's what we're doing. So like the Mickey one, I read the synopsis of it and it was like Mickey and Donald and Goofy are musketeers, but it's happening alongside the main story and
Yeah.
like Athos and Porthos and Araby like, oh no, so we're not doing that.
Yeah.
That's not the story. So we didn't do any animated ones. We didn't do anything where it's not that basic story. So what we have here are, let me check my notes,
13 versions?
10 versions of the Three Musketeers. And we're going to get started over 100 years ago.
It's crazy.
In 1921.
That's so crazy.
Going back to Douglas Fairbanks.
It just blows my mind that we can watch a movie that was made 100 years ago. That's
for free
so,
on this thing called YouTube.
I know, it's so weird.
1921's Three Musketeers, silent epic, Douglas Fairbanks, blah, blah, blah. All right, so here, it's a silent movie. It's a movie that we, can I be honest about
Sure.
something?
Yes.
New year, new you, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
The new season.
New year, new you. It's August.
We're
Okay.
changing things up a little bit. And I just say something that I think is on both of our minds right now.
Sure.
We got this 1921 silent version.
Yeah.
Then we got this 1935 version we got to talk about. And
Yeah.
then in 1939, there was another one that came out that was like a comedy musical version of it.
Yep.
I would kind of like to just skip straight to 1939.
Mm-hmm.
Do you kind of feel the same way?
Well, let me put it this way. 1921 and 1935, here are all my notes combined
Okay.
for both versions, other than writing down the name of the lead actor.
Mm-hmm.
He's 40 if he's a day. I have no idea what's going on. That's it. That's all I wrote down. 2 whole movies. That's all I wrote down.
Like, here's the deal, listener. We're not going to bullshit you. We watched a lot of Three Musketeers for this episode.
Mhm.
And yeah, we could make up some bullshit about these 2 different versions. I'm not saying we're not going to talk about them. Let's talk about them for a few minutes.
Okay.
We got a few things to say about them. I have easily twice the notes that you have.
Mhm.
Just for the 1921 version alone, I have twice as many notes as you have.
There you go. Well, you're a better person than I am.
I know. We can talk about it for a little bit. But if what you want is for us to sit here and go, oh my God, these are so good, right from go, let's talk about all the amazing versions of Three Musketeers. This episode had kind of a rough start.
Yeah.
In terms of keeping our attention.
That's okay. And that's okay.
So shall we do the perfunctory talking about versions that didn't really blow our socks off?
Sure. Let's do it. Let's do it real quick.
Over 100 years ago, a movie came out that we watched 100 years later that didn't blow our socks off and was incredibly important to film history. And
I'm sure no one who was involved in the making of this movie knows or cares because every single one of those people is dead,
Mhm.
which is really a trip.
Yep.
If you think about it.
Poor
Too hard.
director Fred Nibble, dead. Fred Nibble has no idea that his name, Fred Nibble, is being repeated over and over again in a podcast in 2022.
Fred Nibble's rolling in his grave.
Fred Nibble wouldn't understand most of the sentence that I just said. But I will say this, Fred Nibble. You did a good job, Fred Nibble. Like, you directed a good movie.
Yep.
As far as silent movies go, here's my big problem with this one. You can tell me if you think this is a controversial statement. We've watched a lot of silent movies.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the ones we've enjoyed have tended to be a little more straightforward in terms of their plot.
Yeah.
Here's this character, this is the good guy, this is the bad guy.
Yeah.
This one, though, is built on a lot of intrigue.
Sure.
I don't know that intrigue works super well in a 2-hour silent movie.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's fair. You know why?
Why?
Hard to understand. No idea what's going on.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Like,
challenging.
Can I tell you some of the moments that did stick with me?
Yes.
Like everything having to do with like Buckingham. This movie's all about the diamonds, by the way.
yeah.
Like this was our first experience watching filmmakers go, okay, well, we have this big action thing with diamonds, and then there's this other stuff with La Rochelle, but that all seems like bullshit. So I think we'll just do the diamonds. The diamonds is our movie. That's the entire thing. I love a MacGuffin, and that's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
This was our first experience with that because the diamonds are the point. I just remember feeling like when we got towards the end of it, we knew we were coming up on the end, and we kind of looked at each other and we went like, is this just the diamonds? Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, so
They all lived happily ever after.
yeah,
the end.
D'Artagnan's fighting Milady on the boat to get
Yep.
the diamonds back from her, by force,
Yep.
which was not a thing we ever saw before. And
Sure.
He
I
gets
didn't
them.
see anything before because this is the first one we watched, but
No, but
I am picking up what you're putting down.
I mean, saw it on the page.
Sure.
He gets the diamonds. Okay, he gets them back. The queen has the diamonds now. Oh, that's good. Okay, and now Richelieu. Yeah, okay, and Constance is alive. That's nice.
The end.
The end. And we have just watched it. I don't remember most of the intrigue.
I think someone fell down at some point, and it was funny, and someone at one point insulted a horse. The end.
Who insulted a horse?
Well, Rochefort insulted a horse, and that's why D'Artagnan said, "Excuse me, madam, but I must kill your friend."
it's the best line. It's like it doesn't stick in our heads as much as I Am Afeard of Women did.
Yeah, I mean, quoted to this day.
Yeah, so this was still pretty good, but yeah, when he's talking to Milady right before he's about to try to kill Rochefort at the beginning, and he says, "Pardon me, madame, I must kill your friend."
Yes.
I could do the uncharitable thing and say, "Oh, they thought they were being real serious, but like it's unintentionally funny." Like, no, that is 100% intentionally funny. They knew they had comedy gold.
Yeah, I mean, this movie's pretty wacky.
It really is. The other thing that I remember, we got to talk about some flippy dips.
Okay.
Because Douglas Fairbanks,
The master of flippy dips.
famous for his flippy dips, famous for his wild gesticulations. All I'm going to talk about is one thing that he does. He does a wholly unnecessary thing. It happens, I think it's at the beginning where the duel is interrupted by the Cardinal's guards, and they gotta fight him, which we already described. And he does this thing where one of the Cardinal's guards is on the ground and is about to like throw a knife or stab somebody. He runs over, flips head over heels while he is upside down in midair, stabs the man, and then lands on his feet.
Listen, whomst among us has not done a flippy dip, stabbed a man, and landed on our feet? Whomst?
My feeling about it is it took me out of the movie a little bit.
Sure.
Not because I wasn't impressed by Douglas Fairbanks' physical prowess, more like there were a million other ways that could have happened. And it is funny to me that someone would think that is the way to depict that particular action. It is, just from a stunt standpoint, incredibly impressive.
Yeah.
And I will remember it for the rest of my life, unlike a good amount of this movie, which again is a piece of goddamn film history.
Sure.
And deserves all of our respect.
Yes.
But maybe we're not going to talk about it for very much longer because it was also a little boring.
Do you want to move on to a version that, if anything, was even less memorable?
Oh yeah, like this is 1935 was a step down.
Yeah.
1921 had some stuff going for it.
Yeah.
It had Douglas Fairbanks, this amazing wacky person who no one has ever seen anything like again. I don't care if this sounds uncharitable. 1935's The Three Musketeers has nothing.
Yeah.
Has nothing, and it is nothing.
Yeah, this is the one that my only note was he's 40 if he's a day.
Yeah, let's talk about Walter Abel for a second. Where to start? I mean, I think we know where to start.
I mean,
Please.
He's old.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think this is the beginning. Well, not this. I mean, even the Douglas Fairbanks one. Sort of the beginning of a grand tradition of like the Three Musketeers, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, are very old because D'Artagnan is cast too old.
Yeah.
And then they have to cast the other guys, of course, older. D'Artagnan in this is 40 and the other guys are like 60, which is, I don't know that was the intention of the book. Like, D'Artagnan's supposed to be like a youth of 19 and the other dudes are like, I don't know, 20s to 30s.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Not like 50 if they're a day.
I would love to know, directed by Roland V. Lee, by the way, written by Roland V. Lee and Dudley Nichols. I would love to know more about what happened that led to Walter Abel being cast in this. Because, like, he's not a bad actor, and he's done lots of work, and I just think there are a million other parts you could probably find that he'd be better for than this.
He just has no attributes that you would imagine D'Artagnan would have.
Mm-hmm.
He's not young.
You know
he's
what?
Not handsome.
He's not unhandsome. He's just not that type of handsome.
Well, I think I've told this story on the podcast before. If you'll indulge me.
Absolutely.
When I was in grad school, I was working on a production of the Shakespeare play As You Like It, and As You Like It is really famous for having a really strong heroine. Rosalind. And her whole thing is she falls in love with this guy, Orlando, and she dresses for unrelated reasons, dresses as a man and has to go into the Forest of Arden and live there. The director, it was like an all female production team, and the director and I was a friend of mine, and we were like talking, and we were getting ready to do the casting and the auditions and everything. And we were like, what do we need to look for in Orlando? We were having a conversation about like Rosalind, like this amazing, smart, funny, interesting, intelligent woman. She's so cool and she's so strong. She's just a strong character. Like, what does she see in this dude? Because like on the page, he's kind of nothing. He's just a guy. What do we need to do in casting to make this believable? And we're running these auditions and we're doing all this stuff and we just didn't quite get it. We sort of called next, and this guy walks in from the hallway, and he was very tall and he had a guitar and he was very handsome, and the two of us just looked at each other and we were like, I understand now. Orlando's very handsome. He's a beautiful idiot. And that's what she sees in him. And we cast him, and he was fine.
He was fine.
He was fine.
Yes.
We just both got it. We just both instantly got it. And I think that's the energy that I'm looking for in a D'Artagnan, is just a beautiful idiot. And I didn't get that, unfortunately, from Mr. Walter Abel.
Yeah, no, he didn't really come across as a beautiful idiot. He came across as a really smug middle-aged man.
Yeah.
Which is not that's not
With
my
a weird-
D'Artagnan.
With a weird hairdo.
He does have a bit of a weird. I mean, they all kind of do.
Yeah.
But he's wrong for this. And I don't know, I feel like we could go through an exercise right now of like, who are all the actors that we love who would be terrible for D'Artagnan?
I mean, a lot of people would be terrible. Tom Hanks would be terrible.
Yes, Tom Hanks would be terrible.
I mean present day Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
We've gone down a tangent now.
Right.
We've gone down a primrose path, and I'll tell you why.
Why?
We don't have anything to say about this movie.
I have a couple things to say about it.
Okay.
I actually have some notes. I'm doing a count right now. I have 9 notes about this.
That's a lot.
And I will go through them kind of quickly. This movie is too earnest. It's ridiculously earnest. This was also like our first example of watching a version that seemed to not understand that the Three Musketeers is funny, because this movie is played very seriously. Even the parts of it that are a little, like, I guess funnier are still played very seriously. And it doesn't work. I didn't appreciate that about it. Let's talk about this plot for a second.
Yep.
They make some really big decisions that blow my mind. I don't know if you recall this. I spoke at length before about how I think Cardinal Richelieu is a great villain. And they celebrate that by making him not the villain. Instead, Rochefort is the villain, because the whole thing is Rochefort is plotting the entire time to take down Louis and Richelieu at the same time. So he's the big bad of the movie.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
I don't remember that at all.
And it's not worth remembering. It was a really stupid decision. It's one of the few things that stuck with me about this one. Because this Rochefort is nothing.
Yeah.
And they're trying to tell you, it's just upset me a little bit. The swordplay is fun. I will give them that. The swordplay is fun. It just makes some decisions about cutting the movie down that I think are interesting to see in terms of what you can do to speed up this plot and speed up the intrigue. As an example, in the book, D'Artagnan gets a room from Bonacieux. Later, he finds out about Constance. Then later, he finds out that Constance knows the queen. Then later, he finds out that Constance is helping Buckingham get to the palace to meet the queen. Then later, like there's later and later and later, and the whole thing unfolds over, I think, an appropriate amount of time. In this one, he goes, gets the room at Bonacieux's house. While he's in the room, Constance shows up. While she's saying, "Who the fuck are you?" And he's saying, "You have nothing to worry about. I would never hurt anybody." Which, of course,
it's not true.
Does not.
He harms many people.
He harms many people, and also that means nothing in this kind of scenario.
Yep.
Then suddenly Buckingham shows up, and then Queen Anne shows up, and they're all in the bedroom within an hour of him getting this room. It's all happening very, very fast. And it is a love story, like, between Anne and Buckingham. Like, Anne and Buckingham are super hot for each other. All of the layers and all of the subtlety from the book are gone completely. and it just really makes some strong decisions about how to cut everything down.
Yeah.
I found it very interesting. That's all I've got to say about this one.
Great. Do you want to move on?
Okay. This next one's a delight.
This is the only musical we watched, I think.
This one, I don't know. I think this one also breaks that rule a little bit about which versions we were going to watch.
Yeah.
Like, it has to be about D'Artagnan meeting the Three Musketeers because he wants to be a musketeer.
Yeah.
As far as D'Artagnan knows, that's what this is.
Yeah.
How do I set this one up?
Okay. What's the name of these brothers that aren't the Marx brothers?
The Ritz brothers.
The Ritz brothers.
Mhm.
Okay. It's the Ritz brothers.
Yeah. So this is a 1939 movie directed by Alan Dwan, who also did 2 years before he did the Shirley Temple Heidi. Written by William Drake, M.M. Musselman, Sam Hellman, Ray Golden, and Sid Culler.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah, music by Sam Pockerson, lyrics by Walter Bullock. Music and lyrics, you say?
It's a musical.
Is it a music? It is a musical.
It is a musical. It's very delightful.
There's not that many songs in it. There's only 4 songs in it. Bangers all.
Everyone.
Every single one of them. Here's the basic plot. Don Amici plays D'Artagnan, coming to Paris to be a musketeer. As far as he knows, he is the D'Artagnan from the original story. He goes to Paris. He meets the Three Musketeers, challenges them all to a duel. This all happens off screen because we find out about it when all of the Musketeers show up at this inn.
Mm-hmm.
And they go, "Why are you here? Athos, Porthos, why are you here?" And they say, "Well, I have a duel with this idiot." And they go, "I have a duel with this idiot." Separately, we go to the kitchen. And in the kitchen are the 3 lackeys.
Singing a song about soup.
Singing a song about chicken soup. Plucking chickens and singing a song about soup. By the way, at the very beginning of the movie, D'Artagnan is singing a song
called... The most
called
amazing song.
Voila, which is just...
Voila, 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 voila.
There are girls in old Paris. Like,
it's so good. It's so good.
It is so good. It's been in my head since the day we watched it.
Is it out of copyright? Can we play a little clip of it?
I don't know if it is. I'm not sure. I don't want to do it. I'll link to it in the show notes.
All right, sounds good.
Everyone can go listen to it. It is... It's a fucking banger. It's so good. And Don Amici's amazing in this. My only experience of Don Amici for years was him as an older actor in like Cocoon and Trading Places and stuff like that. I didn't know that he was this young, handsome singer comedy guy.
He's a handsome lad.
And he's so good in this. So the Ritz brothers play these 3 guys in the kitchen, Jimmy, Harry, and Al. They are, as you say, not the Marx brothers, but...
They are brothers.
They're basically, I guess I would say... Best as I can figure out, everyone in comedy, especially like of their time, knows them.
Okay.
And loves them. And they were incredibly influential. They just never really hit it big in movies the way some of the other people did, like Abbott and Costello and the Marx Brothers and stuff like that. But by all accounts, really great guys and very funny, and they're very funny in this. They definitely have that thing where they all look exactly the same, and what they all look like are just a bunch of nice Jewish boys.
Yeah. Well, this movie has very like Muppet Christmas Carol energy to me, because Don Amici, as you say, for all he knows, he is D'Artagnan in the Three Musketeers.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys know that they're not Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, because those characters exist and they're like drunk upstairs in the tavern.
Yeah, and they steal their clothes.
Yeah, they've switched places. It's a farce.
Yeah.
But much like Muppet Christmas Carol needed Michael Caine to sort of be the straight man, so in this is Don Amici, again, for all he knows, in a perfectly legit version of Three Musketeers.
Yeah. Can I go on a little Marx Brothers tangent for a second?
Sure.
Their earlier movies, they were the main characters. And it was all about their madcap adventures. And if there was ever any romance, it was usually between Zeppo and some lady. They were never really that successful because Zeppo was never really that successful as a member of the troupe, and the romance parts were never really that great. Then they went to a different studio and they did a couple movies in a row. They did A Night at the Opera. That was their first big one when they switched studios. Night at the Opera is my favorite Marx Brothers movie. And what that movie does is it says, okay, we're going to do a big musical comedy. There's going to be 2 main characters that are the love interests that are not the Marx Brothers, but the Marx Brothers are going to be there being funny the whole time. But the audience is going to be invested in 2 people who are young and pretty and good singers, and they're going to have an interesting story. And I love that one because to me, it strikes this perfect balance of comedy and heart. It kills me that I had never seen this movie until I was almost 40 years old, because I would have loved this movie when I was a kid. I would have worn out the VHS. I would have had to buy 3 copies of it. I would have watched it so many times. This movie is so much goddamn fun.
It was really fun.
It's so much fun because you can take the stuff with the Ritz brothers, and they're very silly, and there's a lot of slapstick, and they fall down a lot, and they're always getting by the skin of their teeth, and they get in fights with the Cardinals guards, but also all the stuff with Don Amici and Pauline Moore's Lady Constance. Their stuff is great. And so there's 4 songs in this. There's Voila, which we already talked about. There's Chicken Soup, which we already talked about. And there's this song called My Lady, which is the love song that D'Artagnan sings to Constance. It's really, really good and gets a reprise later in the movie. It's fantastic. I love the two of them. 2 things about the plot. First of all, it's just the diamonds. Everything's, as always, just about the diamonds. 1935 was just about the diamonds, too. The second thing about the plot is it's the 1935 version. We did a silly thing. We watched these out of order because I couldn't get the 35 version until after the 39 one. And we're watching the 35 one going like, wait a minute. This is everything that's happening is that entire scene that I described where D'Artagnan goes and he's like in Constance's room and then Buckingham shows up and then the Queen shows up. They just used the same script.
Yep.
For the 1939 one.
Which we've seen before in movies from this era that they just like lift whole. Like, if you're doing a remake, like, why would you write the same scene again? Like, just use the previous script. They were not as fussy about that then, I guess, as we are now.
And there's, like, a whole thing later that happens in both versions where D'Artagnan gets taken captive by Milady, and he's in her carriage all tied up and has to get rescued by the other Musketeers. It's in both. It just is much funnier in this one because it's the Ritz brothers as the Musketeers.
I wrote down a quote. This is, again, like one of my few notes, and I don't remember what the context of this was. This is the quote I wrote down. I'm not concerned with methods, only results.
Was it when the lackeys were trying to get Richelieu's letter off of Milady?
Yeah.
And they have to hold her upside down to shake the letter out of her dress?
Yeah, because they were like too delicate to actually like stick their hand down the front of her dress to get the letter, so they were trying to do all of these other ways of getting it was very funny.
Yep.
Getting the letter out of her dress, that was pretty funny.
It worked really well.
Yeah.
But then the whole thing leads to the big showdown at the ball. They've got to get the diamonds to the Queen, and D'Artagnan has a fight with Rochefort. And it would be at home in any straight version of the Three Musketeers that you could possibly see. It just so happens that separately, the Ritz brothers are being very funny.
Yeah.
But D'Artagnan does not know that he is in a farce, and he kills Rochefort. And it is thrilling and great sword fighting, and the whole movie ends. And the movie's like a cool 1 hour and 15 minutes. And
it's my favorite kind of movie.
Does not overstay its welcome, and it is just a goddamn delight. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Would you like to talk about Gene Kelly?
Sure.
Okay. Shall we do the dunking right off the bat, or shall we save it?
Either way.
We've already had Walter Abel, who you maintain, I completely disagree, that he was somehow too old to play D'Artagnan.
40 if he's a day.
I don't understand that. D'Artagnan, there's a lot of room in the text for D'Artagnan to be 30,
40.
38, 39, something like that.
Okay.
So now we got Gene Kelly.
40 if he's a day.
Yeah. And it's worse because it's in big, beautiful Technicolor, and you can see every crag in the guy's face. You can see his hair slightly graying underneath.
I mean, when he's saying like goodbye to his father, a man who's the same age as himself, like
it takes away a bit somewhat.
It strains credibility. And it was funny because we were watching and he was like meeting up, with the 3 guys and everything. And I turned to you and I was like, why is everyone so old? And I turned back to the screen and I was like, I just answered my own question. Obviously, they're old because Gene Kelly is old and they have to be older than Gene Kelly.
But let me back up for a second.
Sure.
Okay, so 1948, there was a big giant color Three Musketeers spectacular starring Gene Kelly as D'Artagnan, directed by George Sidney, written by Robert Ardrey. Like, this does have a heck of a cast. Like, top billed, Lana Turner as Milady. I think this was her first color movie, I want to say.
I have no idea.
Don't quote me on that.
I won't.
The Musketeers are kind of worth mentioning. Like Gig Young as Porthos and Robert Coote as Aramis.
Robert Coote?
Yeah, I don't really remember them super well.
All right.
From what I remember, Porthos and Aramis are kind of minor in this Three Musketeers. But Athos is Van Heflin.
Yes.
Making his second appearance on the show because he was in 3:10 to Yuma.
Right.
I do enjoy Van Heflin.
Yeah.
And I think he's quite good in this. Did you have any opinions about this Athos.
No.
That's totally fine.
I have some opinions about Lana Turner as Milady, though.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to get into it?
I mean, not Lana Turner herself per se. She's fine. Just the way that she is styled in this is so fascinating to me. I tried to look it up on Frockflix,
Yeah.
which is a blog that I enjoy, to see if they had ever done anything about this version because the costumes were so ridiculous. And I couldn't find that they had ever reviewed it. But the just what they have her wearing is like she wears these very like bright, because it's Technicolor, right? So like these really brightly colored, at one point she was like all in green, like bright green.
This like beautiful black and green. Yeah, I remember that.
And
looked like she walked right off of a riverboat in 1890.
Yeah, like there was no period accuracy or attempt at period accuracy to any of this, including the hair, which is like just 1940s hair.
Yeah.
Like she's just wearing a dress, an oldie-timey, slightly looking dress with completely modern hair, which like we do these days. It's just like to our eyes, it's like that's funny because it's 1940s hair. Like you see period pieces now with people wearing like completely modern bangs, and smoky eyes is the thing that I always get annoyed by.
Were there smoky eyes in this one?
I didn't notice any smoky eyes. I did notice at one point a female character said to another character, "Lace me up the back," and the dress that she was wearing did not have back lacing on it. Just an interesting thing that I noticed. Anyway, speaking of women, I did write down my favorite line.
Will you lay it on me?
So this is when I think D'Artagnan was trying to persuade Constance to go on some mission to Milady to I don't know, steal the diamonds back or whatever it was, and he says, "You see, you're a woman yourself and safe from her more obvious temptations." And we both looked at each other and went, No, not safe at all.
Nope.
Milady, no man is safe, no woman is safe from Milady. Milady does not care.
But June Allison is so innocent.
Yeah.
She's so innocent and virginal with her 27 crow's feet.
I don't think it's nice to make fun of what people look like before they had Botox.
I am not making fun of what people look like because crow's feet are a totally normal thing that happens to everybody.
I think she just happened to have a very crinkly face. Like she wasn't that old. She wasn't like that old in this. She just like that's how her face looked, and they didn't have sunscreen.
No,
and they didn't have Botox back then.
I'm just saying, like she does not project. She and Gene Kelly do not project
youthfulness. No,
they don't. They project passion and charm. They're both compelling. Like basically everybody in this movie is compelling.
I thought June Allison was very cute in this.
Yeah, I thought so too. I'm not making fun of how she looks. I think she was beautiful in this movie.
Yeah, because you like a middle-aged woman.
I can't deny it. I can. I won't. Do you know who is very youthful in this movie?
Angela Lansbury.
Angela Lansbury
as the queen.
What was she, like 12?
I mean, she was
7?
20?
20, like 20, 21, something like that.
Yeah.
She's such a baby.
Yeah.
It's adorable to see.
Still living to this day. It's nice to see movies where not every single person that you see on the screen is dead.
Yeah.
Because that does, I will say, get me down sometimes when we watch these things and I'm like, everyone is dead.
Yeah.
Everyone.
I want to bring up something that's actually kind of tangential. It doesn't have a lot to do with the Three Musketeers, but it has a lot to do with our show.
Nothing we've mentioned so far has anything to do with the Three Musketeers.
We have been doing a thing for a few years now where we have tried to honor the people who have popped up a lot in the things that we've been watching. And so we have kind of dubbed them Friends of the Pod.
Yes. And I feel that perhaps every time we've mentioned this, we have not explained it very well. Because I will say, my dad listened to an episode and texted me and said, "Are you really friends with Wallace Shawn?" And I was like, "No, that's just a funny thing that we say." We called him friend of the pod.
Yeah.
We're not actually friends with Wallace Shawn.
There's like two different ways that someone can become friend of the pod.
Yes.
One is you're cool and we meet you.
Yes.
Like Wallace Shawn.
Wallace Shawn.
He's great. We met him.
We decided he was friend of the pod.
Decided it. The other way, though, the much more official way, is you show up in 3 episodes. If you've been in 3 episodes, you're friend of the pod.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. As I was taking notes for this specific version, like 3 different people became friend of the pod in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because Keenan Wynn shows up in this. He plays Paul Shea.
Yeah.
We saw him in Angels in the Outfield. We saw him in The Absent-Minded Professor. Reginald Owen shows up as Treville.
Mm-hmm.
He was in A Christmas Carol. He's been in a bunch of things. It's his third appearance. Angela Lansbury, official friend of the pod at this point. So I said to you, maybe we need to be a little more selective.
Maybe we need to make it harder to be friend of the pod.
I think we got to treat our friend of the pod status a little more like the Five Timers Club.
Yep.
Which doesn't mean that no one will be. It's not like we're eliminating everybody. What I'm saying is we got a new metric.
Yeah.
And as people become friends of the pod, we will mention it.
Yes.
But everyone we've ever mentioned as friend of the pod, ignore those.
Just again, to make clarification, Charlton Heston, despite having been discussed on 5 different occasions, will never be friend of the pod.
I mean, says you.
Charlton Heston is enemy of the pod.
He gets. So you're saying he's special?
I'm saying he's my nemesis.
Special title.
Yes. Enemy of the pod.
But anyway, back to the Three Musketeers. I don't know. It's weird to watch a movie like this that is like, it's a big Technicolor classic, but isn't a classic that people talk about very much.
No, I couldn't find a lot about it. Like I said, I was looking to see if anyone had ever done any commentary about the costumes because they were so wild, and I couldn't find anything. I looked up Gene Kelly, and it's not what Gene Kelly is known for, apparently, being a too old D'Artagnan in this Three Musketeers. But
I guess
it was fun.
I guess they used clips from it in Singin' in the Rain to be one of his old silent movies.
Oh, that's really funny. We'll have to watch it again and look for it.
Yeah, I tried to find a clip, but I couldn't find a clip of it. It's, I don't know, this is one of those weird ones where here are some things about it that I appreciate. I appreciate that they seem to understand that the book is an action comedy.
Yep.
Because the movie is an action comedy.
Yep.
The whole first fight scene where he's going to duel with the Musketeers, but then the Cardinals guards show up. His duel with Jussac, it goes on for, I would say conservatively, 27 minutes.
Yep.
Gene Kelly gets to do a lot of big stunts. And also his stunt double gets to do a lot of big stunts.
I mean, yeah.
But it is a big, funny movie. It does get very, very serious in the second half.
Yeah.
Because they did make the decision, the diamonds are the second act MacGuffin.
Yes.
That's over halfway through the movie, which is the way it is in the book. And then the whole second half is, it's not exactly the book, but it's closer to the book.
Yeah.
Milady gets imprisoned. Her brother-in-law has nothing to do with it. Instead, Buckingham has said, you will be locked in this tower, and I have the perfect person to be in charge of you. This man, Felton, is standing next to the person that I have chosen, who is this lady Constance.
Yes.
Who is here from France,
yes.
even though she speaks perfect American English like all of us.
Maybe he's the one who says, you see, you're a woman and safe from her more obvious temptations. I actually think that is Buckingham who says that.
Yes.
Now that I think of it.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter who says it.
It doesn't matter who says it. It's still ridiculous.
The line's wrong.
Obviously, she's going to seduce Constance.
And just the idea that they would make Constance be the one who's in charge of her is just the dumbest idea.
It's really
in
dumb.
The world.
It doesn't work at all. And then there's this whole plot where Constance is like, I have to not be in charge of this. This is too much for me. And she's sort of trying to get out of it. It's very weird.
Yeah. And I mean, let's just spoil it. I saw a thing I did not expect to happen in this one happens. Constance dies.
Yeah.
Milady stabs her to death.
Yeah, I didn't think that she was going to bite it.
Yeah, right before stabbing Buckingham to death. Yeah. Milady goes on a little bit of a killing spree.
A stabbing spree.
Because doesn't she kill Felton too?
I don't know.
Isn't he? Is Felton even in it?
No, he's not really.
He's not even in it. Yeah. So they did pull the rug out from under me a little bit in that one. I did not expect her to die. I feel like this movie just doesn't really tie together.
Yeah.
This movie has a lot of elements that are individually fun and compelling. We haven't even mentioned the fact that Vincent Price is Richelieu. By the way, not Cardinal Richelieu. Not wanting to risk offending Roman Catholics, MGM ensured that the character was never referred to as a cardinal.
Great.
So
he's just a guy.
That's what we get in the 40s.
He's
the prime minister.
Right. No, I understand.
So he's Prime Minister Richelieu. He's Vincent Price. He's fantastic. I love seeing Vincent Price in anything.
Yeah.
I got no problem with Vincent Price ever. He's tall and wonderful. What I'm saying is there's lots of great stuff in this movie individually. I just didn't feel like any of it gelled. When we got to the end of this one, did you also kind of feel kind of empty?
Just empty inside?
Just empty inside.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like sometimes we get to the end of things, and even if I haven't really enjoyed them, I will be like, I recommend watching this because it was fun. I don't know that this was that much fun, even with the star-studded cast, which I think is the thing it has to sort of recommend itself. It's like, oh, look at all these cool actors. Yeah, it kind of ended up being nothing, which is kind of surprising.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful movie. It's fun to watch. You know what? Here's a fun way to watch it. I'm going to go back to something you said in our 10 Commandments episode.
Okay.
So you had a great idea about how to watch Anne Baxter in the 10 Commandments.
Sure.
Because her performance is a little batshit.
Yeah. It's a little over the top.
Right? Don't think of it as Anne Baxter. Think of it as an Eve Harrington movie.
Right.
It's her character from All About
It's
Eve.
the movie that she went to Hollywood to make at the end of
Right.
the film. Yes.
Which I love.
Yes.
I think the fun way to watch this movie would be thinking that D'Artagnan is not played by Gene Kelly, but played by Gene Kelly's character from Singin' in the Rain.
Yes.
I think that would be a more fun way to watch this movie.
It would be a fun way to frame it.
But
yes.
I think I can think of a bunch of reasons why people should watch it, and it all has to do with how much you love certain actors. If you're a Lana Turner fan, or a Gene Kelly fan, or a Vincent Price fan, or
Angela Lansbury.
Like if you love
June Allison.
Yeah, if you love Angela Lansbury and you've never seen this movie, this is a version of Angela Lansbury that you do not get to see very much.
Yeah.
Because she is a goddamn baby. And she's adorable. Like, it's worth watching. I just would say it doesn't rank very highly as the Three Musketeers adaptation at all.
Yeah, I think I don't want to state this as like a hard and fast rule, but it seems to me that the times that we tend to like lose interest in the third act is when you're watching something that is like not amazing, and then the third act really takes a turn from the source material, because there's this sort of sensation of like, what is happening?
Yeah.
What is happening right now? Like, you're slightly tuned out because it's not that interesting, and then suddenly it's like you're thrust in the middle of a plot that you don't recognize. And I feel like I've seen that pattern happen before with other versions and other properties, which is like, we've decided to change the ending, but it wasn't that good to begin with.
Yeah.
And now I'm just confused as an audience member. I'm just confused. And I wonder if that sensation is heightened by the fact that we've always read the book and watched a million versions. Like, if you were just watching this with no prep, if it would feel that much if it would feel that much like sort of a dissociative experience. Who can say, like, we know where we're coming from.
Right.
But we can't speak for anyone else.
Before we move on, can I say one more thing about this movie? I realized I forgot my last note.
Sure.
It made me very angry in the moment,
Oh,
and
no.
it made me so angry I blocked it.
Oh no.
The end of the movie comes, and they have done the whole thing where Richelieu has written the letter, the carte blanche for Milady, and the Musketeers have stolen it. And D'Artagnan gets the letter, because they do put Milady to death. He gets the letter, and it works. Like, Richelieu they're all in front of court, and they're there in front of the king, and he says, they killed this lady. That's real bad. And D'Artagnan goes, but I have this letter.
This letter, you see.
And it works. Like, their plan works.
Yeah.
Because they look at it and go, well, this says he could do whatever he wants, and it's signed by you, Richelieu. And Richelieu's like, curses.
Yes.
Made me so irrationally angry. Because just the idea that, like, to me, that is the quintessential D'Artagnan moment in the original. Of all the quintessential D'Artagnan moments, is the idea that he would have this amazing chess piece that he could use to do a checkmate whenever. I know how chess works. And he just hands it to Richelieu because he's such an idiot. That shouldn't work. If you read the book and you think, I really like this thing with the letter, but I'm going to make it actually succeed in my version, I think you've missed the point.
Yeah.
And it made me very angry. Moving on. I came to you one day. And I said, sweetie, I got a bit of a good news, bad news situation.
Yes.
And I said, would you like the bad news first? Would you like to reenact this? Would
Sure.
you like the good news first or the bad news first?
Bad news.
So the bad news is there was a TV show from the BBC from 1966 that ran for 10 episodes.
And I said, no, do we have to
And
watch them all? They're not available, are they? I don't want to.
I can get them. The library has a DVD of it. We can watch the whole thing. We can watch
No,
that.
I said, what's the good news?
The good news is D'Artagnan is Jeremy Brett.
Let's watch it. Let's watch all of it. Let's start today.
And then it got even better.
Yeah.
Because I didn't sell it to you this way, but if I had said to you in that moment, D'Artagnan is Jeremy Brett and Richard Pascoe is Richelieu,
I would have been like, Jesus Christ.
and
Yes.
Brian Blessed is Porthos,
God damn it. Bring it on.
inject it straight into my veins. So there was this 1966 BBC TV series directed by Peter Hammond, written by Anthony Stephen. Jeremy Brett is D'Artagnan. Brian Blessed is Porthos.
Wait, before you say the names of the actors, can I just say something that tickled me every single
Absolutely.
episode? The credit sequence of every single episode. This is such a British production of a French original text. that D'Artagnan, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis are played by Jeremy, Brian, and Gary. I just loved it so much. It made me so happy.
Every
Every time, beginning and end. So 20 times. 20 times it made me happy. I'm sorry. Please continue. Read the names of the cast.
Well, I was pretty much done with it because, like, the big people I've already mentioned, there's a lot of little people in it. And the thing that, so this brings me back to the 60s Les Mis adaptation that we watched that Frank Finlay was in, where he played Valjean.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same kind of thing where Wuthering Heights had one, the one with Ian McShane.
Yep.
I hear tons of people talk about 70s and 80s BBC adaptations.
Yeah.
But the 60s, I feel like I don't hear about that very much.
They're all black and white. I don't know if that makes a difference to anybody. It's all these black and white things from the 60s.
They're all black and white. They're all shot for, $10.
$1, yeah.
They're incredibly cheap looking. But the thing that has been consistent through all of them is that the writing is top notch.
Yeah.
And the acting is top notch.
The acting is fucking amazing in this is like Shakespearean actor, like stage trained Shakespearean British actors of the 60s doing Three Musketeers as if it's Shakespeare. Like some of the there was a scene between Jeremy Brett and Richard Pascoe that I turned to you and I was like, I can't believe that I am watching these two guys do this scene like it's a scene from a play. It was so amazing. I really loved it. And the dialogue supported it because the dialogue was really dramatic and very, very theatrical.
Yeah. The script's so good for this. Just in case anybody doesn't know, because we talk about Jeremy Brett every 5 minutes on the show. Is there what's the big thing that people might know Richard Pascoe from?
I don't know if there is a big thing that people might know Richard Pascoe from.
What would you direct people to?
In the late 1970s, mid 1980s, the BBC did this thing where they filmed every Shakespeare play.
Yeah. We watched their version of Romeo and Juliet when we did that.
Yeah, and it has a ton of amazing people in it because that was it was the RSC, like that was the era of the height of the Royal Shakespeare Company. Derek Jacobi's in a bunch of them. I think Patrick Stewart might be in a couple of them. But their version of Julius Caesar, I love so much. I've watched it 100 times. I used to check it out at the library on VHS. This is the kind of child I was. I used to check it out at the library on VHS tape every couple weeks and watch it. Richard Pascoe plays Brutus. And I just love it. And that's what I know him from. He was in one Robin Hood that we watched.
Yeah.
And I was excited to see him. But
it was a bummer because it was a bad one.
It was a really bad one. But he's so good in this. Like he's Richelieu's such a great character and such a great part. And we've seen like almost every single one of these, like Richelieu is like amazing and a premier actor, it's usually an and so as Cardinal Richelieu, but he's so good in this. He's such a good actor. I don't think he had much of a movie career, so I don't know that anybody knows him from anything, but I think he's just so great.
Yeah.
His name's Richard Pascoe. Can we talk about Brian Blessed for a darn second?
Please.
How has Brian Blessed been the same character in everything for 50 years? How does anyone make a career for themselves where they just dress up in a fun costume, saunter on, play themselves, and saunter back off again? Because from all accounts, like this is him. Like this is his personality. He's just big and weird and loud and funny. I don't know how to describe what the thing is that Brian Blessed is doing. I love that he calls his friends my dears constantly because that is in the book. That Porthos is like, my dears, shall we have some wine? He's so good. I just love him.
I don't think I could make a list of like my favorite. Porthos tends to be one of the most consistent bits of casting in all of these.
Porthos is usually really fun.
Yeah, because he's the most broad of all the Musketeers, so it's a little easier to cast him and easier for it to be fun. He might be my favorite Porthos in 10 versions.
I think he might be.
It's like, a little spoiler, it's between him and Frank Finlay in the 1973-74 versions.
Yeah.
But like, he is incredible.
Yeah.
And also in his 20s?
Yeah, he was like 28.
Yeah.
I think he's my favorite Porthos. Jeremy Brett, by the way, was like 2 years older than him. Jeremy Brett was like 30.
Yeah. Jeremy Brett, by the way, he's a very good D'Artagnan.
He's very good.
At the beginning, I was worried he actually wasn't going to be a good D'Artagnan, and
Yeah.
he ended up being a very good D'Artagnan.
Well, I just love Jeremy Brett because, like, again, he is an actor who has a thing that he does.
Mhm.
He's not doing it all the time in this, but you just sometimes get these little, like, Jeremy Brett touches, like that little flash of a smile that that he'll do, or that little ha ha ha, his little laugh. Because some actors, like, really become the character, and some actors form the character to themselves. And I think Jeremy Brett is
and Brian Blessed.
and Brian Blessed are Brian Blessed does it in a very exaggerated manner.
Yeah.
But like Jeremy Brett has a way of making any character that he plays into Jeremy Brett.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like when we saw him in Rebecca, it's a very different character than this, and it's a very different character than Sherlock Holmes, but there are things that he does that are the same.
Yeah.
In playing all those different characters.
That tiny little smile is
that tiny little smile.
That's the Jeremy Brett special.
That's the Jeremy Brett special.
One little thing about Jeremy Brett that I just want to mention before we move on, like, yes, I agree with you. Like, he is doing kind of the same thing all the time. But I only really know him from 4 things.
Yeah.
I know him from Sherlock Holmes, Rebecca, this, and My Fair Lady.
Yes.
It is interesting to me that I can see him as an actor, and this has just been my impression. He is doing a lot of the same things when he's playing those characters, but it's funny that you could take Freddy and D'Artagnan and put them at one end of a spectrum.
Yep.
And then take Sherlock and Maxim
Yeah.
and put them at the other end of the spectrum, where like they have gears that turn,
Yeah.
but on one end of the spectrum, the gears turn inside the head.
Yeah.
And on the other end of the spectrum, the gears turn outside the head.
Sure.
And it doesn't change the fact that like these 4 characters are very big thinkers. They're very cerebral characters.
Yes.
It just D'Artagnan and Freddy just wear their mind on their sleeve.
Yeah,
basically
they're cerebral but dumb.
Exactly. And I feel like that was the thing that switched me, because at first that first episode with him, I was just like,
It was a tiny bit rough.
I just think this is rough. This is not really doing it for me. By the time we got to episode 4 or 5, I had totally gotten into a groove with a Jeremy Brett D'Artagnan. He made it work. It's not my favorite D'Artagnan, but he's definitely doing something different than he's doing in his other roles.
What else do you have?
I do have one note here that I didn't choose to write down. I was instructed to write this down. Dracula hand sex.
Okay. So there's a scene where D'Artagnan goes to Milady and has to disguise his face to pretend to be her other lover, the Comte de Ward, which A, is ridiculous. B, Jeremy Brett has a very distinctive voice, and he's not really hiding his face very much at all.
Nope.
And they have what I assume was very racy for the BBC in 1966, a very, very racy encounter, but it involved just a lot of like clasping of hands. I don't know why I wrote Dracula hand sex.
You didn't write it. You made me write it. You didn't have your pen,
and
you said, I don't have my pen. Can you please write down Dracula hand sex?
What was the Dracula situation?
No, it's just the way they were doing it. I can't really, this is terrible pod, but like I can't, just the way that Dracula has his hands and gets kind of contorted.
Yeah.
It's not like their fingers were just intertwining in the way that normal people
they
do
were
it.
Just like,
it was very theatrical and very exaggerated the way that their hands were intertwining around each other.
Okay, Dracula hand sex.
Yeah.
That's the title of your sex tape.
This one's a delight. Like, here's the deal. I feel really bad that I'm telling everybody to do this. Watch this. Try to find it. It's not easy to find. You're going to have to go get the DVD from your library. But it's worth it because it's so good. And then, thank God, after that rough start, we go from something that was really, really good to another thing that's really, really good.
This was really good. I don't want to spoil anything that we're about to talk about, but in retrospect, I think this might have been my favorite version that we watched, just in terms of how enjoyable it was.
Same.
Yeah.
This is my favorite one.
Yeah.
This is the best one. Obviously, best is subjective.
Yes.
But I feel really confident saying this is the best version of the Three Musketeers.
Well, it's a tone thing.
Yeah.
Like the tone of the 1966 TV one, I felt was very serious.
Yeah.
And didn't quite capture, while the acting was very good and it had funny parts in it, maybe didn't quite capture the goofy spirit of the Three Musketeers. So what are we talking about? What are we even talking about?
So in 1973 and 1974, there were 2 movies that came out, Three Musketeers and The Four Musketeers. They were directed by Richard Lester, written by George MacDonald Fraser, more importantly, produced by Alexander Ilya and Michael Salkind. And the thing about the Salkinds that I feel like is important to say is they weren't like huge movie producers, but they did some things that people heard about. I think their two biggest ones were Three Musketeers and the Four Musketeers, and then also the Superman movies. So in 1978, they did Superman. 1980, they did Superman 2. And they hit on this beautiful way of making movies in the early 70s with the Three Musketeers. Here's what we'll do. We'll make a movie, and here's my plan. It's too long. We're going to shoot for a really long time. But as far as any of our actors know, it's just a really long movie.
Mm-hmm.
But what we know is that we're going to cut it in half in the middle, and we're going to release the second half as a totally separate movie next year.
And then we don't have to pay anyone for being in two different movies. Isn't that clever? Are we clever?
We are so smart. There is now in...
You can't do this anymore.
You cannot do this anymore. You have not been able to do this for a very long time. And all the people who were in the movie took them to court for a very long time to get the pay that they deserved for making two movies that they didn't know about. So this is called the Sulkin Clause.
Yeah.
That's in every actor's contract. So by the time they got to Superman, they did the same thing, except they were upfront about it.
Yeah.
They're like, we're going to make two movies at the same time. And with Superman, it went badly because they hired Richard Donner to direct both of them. He directed the first one. It came out in 1978, and it was a huge smash hit. And then the second one, by the time they were getting through the second half, it was going over budget, and they fired him. And they thought, who can we bring on to finish directing Superman 2?
Our friend Richard Lester.
Our friend Richard Lester, who did those Three Musketeers movies for us, he should come on. And he did Superman 2. So if you watch Superman 2, a lot of it's Richard Donner, a lot of it's Richard Lester. It is a goofy fucking movie, and I don't like it at all.
What, Superman 2?
Superman 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why are we talking about Superman 2?
Well, I'm saying this is all going to tie back. I don't get a chance to talk about Superman very much on this show. You get to talk about Jeremy Brett and All About Eve every goddamn episode. I want to talk about Superman for a little bit.
Just saying, by the time that it came around to Peter Jackson doing these things, everyone was like, we know it's 3 movies.
Right.
You're going to go to New Zealand and live there for 18 months and do 3 movies. And they were all like, sign me up.
Exactly. So, Richard Lester, terrible match for Superman. Made it goofy and slapstick, and I hated it. My goodness, what a good match for the Three Musketeers. Like, I'm going to throw this out there. One of the best pairings of director and source material that I think I have ever seen. I just think his tone perfectly matched the book. So we get these 2 movies, The Three Musketeers and The Four Musketeers, 73 and 74.
Yeah. Starring
Michael York as D'Artagnan, Oliver Reed as Athos, Frank Finlay as Porthos, and O'Reilly? Do you remember this?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So they do the whole thing. So it's 2 movies. So the first movie is The Diamonds.
Yep.
And it ends with, the Queen getting the diamonds back. And then the second movie is La Rochelle and Constance dies. Like, I'm spoiling everything, obviously. Frank Finlay's...
Murdering Milady and all that stuff.
Frank Finlay's Porthos, and he's a Porthos for the ages. He's an incredible Porthos, but he also plays the guy who makes the new diamond studs for Buckingham.
For some reason.
And it's great, and I have no problem with it. It's really, really fun. And Richard Chamberlain is Aramis.
Yeah.
So this is one of the few times across all of these where I feel like they cast actors for all 3 of the Musketeers who were at the same level and were able to bring something really special to the characters. We're going to talk about the Disney one in a little bit.
Yeah.
I think the Disney one does the same thing.
Sure.
Some of the older ones, like that Gene Kelly one.
Yeah.
Like Athos is great.
Yeah.
I don't remember Aramis and Porthos.
No, I hear you.
Even a little.
I don't know. I think the 1966 TV movie did a good job with the casting.
We also get to spend so much time with those
That's
characters
true.
too,
That's
which
true.
was really, really
That's
nice.
true.
No, you're absolutely right. They did maybe the best job.
But I hear what you're saying. I hear
Yeah.
what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing with
But
you.
as far as a movie goes, I
Yeah.
think this one did a really good job of that because Richard Chamberlain, Frank Finlay, and Oliver Reed are all fantastic in it.
Yeah.
Oliver Reed really playing against type. He's playing this like violent drunk, which I mean was not was not him behind the scenes even a little.
Apparently it was. Also, Raquel Welch is in this as Constance. I think she's absolutely terrible. Like really bad.
She's great. I don't know what you're talking about.
She's just truly.
They found something with Constance that I really feel was clearly in the subtext of the book that was never the text, but it was always the subtext.
Boobs?
Well, obviously. Also, in addition to that, she is an incredibly clumsy, awkward character.
Yeah. That was the running joke, apparently.
It is not in the book. Obviously, it's not in the book. But they looked at Constance on the page and they said, we need more. We need something more. We need to give her something.
Well, I don't know if it was a women can't be funny thing or Raquel Welch can't be funny thing, but they were like, we need to give her some physical humor because she can't act very well.
Raquel Welch is not known for her acting ability.
No, she's known for her boobs.
She's known for her face and her boobs.
All right.
Have you seen it?
It's
so pretty.
It doesn't really match. It's not very like period accurate. You should talk about a smoky eye. She's wearing a lot of makeup.
I feel like Raquel Welch and Michael York have a lot of chemistry in this movie.
I did not. I truly did not. I just thought Raquel Welch was just dreadful. I just want to take you through a few minutes of what it's like to watch these movies with me. I think you the audience, because you know.
I was there.
I think I've gone down sort of a maudlin or morbid path sometimes. Again, like I mentioned before, I do sometimes get down when we're watching movies that are a little bit older, thinking of how many people in the cast are dead.
Mm-hmm.
It just bums me out. And we're watching this, in the very first scene, Joss Ackland plays D'Artagnan's father,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And I had a hard time recognizing him. I was like, who is that? Who is that? I know who that is. And you're like, that's Joss Ackland. And I was like, oh, Joss Ackland. Is he dead? Because that's what I say about everyone. And you were like, of course he's so old. Like, he was old then. Like, of course he's dead.
Did I say he was dead?
You said he was dead.
I did?
You were like, obviously he's dead.
Joss, I'm so sorry.
And if you had seen me, what you would have seen was the movie's playing. Jeremy's watching the movie. I'm on my phone frantically typing away. About 2 minutes later, I turned to you and I was like, I have great news for you about Joss Ackland. He's like 95.
I was very happy about that.
I was happy about that. The other thing that happened, again, this one's more of a bummer. We haven't really talked about Roy Kinnear yet, who plays Planchet.
Shit, you're just going to go right into this?
Well,
I thought this could be the last thing we talk about.
Do you want it to be the last thing we talk about?
No, go for it. You've already brought it up.
Well, I just was saying these two incidents occurred, and we had the same conversation. I said, Roy Kinnear, he's dead, right? And you're like, yeah, Roy Kinnear is dead. Obviously, he's dead.
And in my mind, Roy Kinnear died of a heart attack in like the 80s or 90s or something like that.
Like
that was
he's
in
just
my
an
head.
Older guy.
He died of a heart attack in the 80s or 90s.
This is the Mandela effect that you had.
Just in case anyone needs to picture Roy Kinnear, he's Veruca Salt's dad in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah. This is a sort of an apoplectic looking man. Like,
Yep.
you would think, oh, he had health problems. So I looked up Roy Kinnear. And I was like, Roy Kinnear died much younger than I would have thought. Roy Kinnear died at like 50, 51 or so. And I said, I was like, stop the movie. I said, do you know how Roy Kinnear died? And you said, not specifically. I think you said, I don't know, did he have a heart attack? I said, no. He died making the sequel to this movie. Fell off a horse and died making the sequel to this movie. Richard Lester killed his friend, Roy Kinnear.
Richard Lester felt terrible about this, by the way.
Good. He should have felt terrible about it. Like, that's an awful thing to happen.
He stopped directing because of it.
Jesus Christ.
Like, it was really sad for all of them. I mean, don't blame Richard Lester. Blame the Salkins.
I'll blame the Salkins then.
Yeah.
It
Like,
was,
so
like,
years...
don't make a man in his 50s, a portly man in his 50s, ride a horse.
Okay, so
like,
Roy Kinnear plays
that.
Planchet in this. He's the broadest Planchet there could possibly be. I don't mean physically broad. I mean in terms of the comedy.
Yeah.
They made Three Musketeers and Four Musketeers. Then late in the 80s, they all came back together to make The Return of the Musketeers. And there is a scene where he's supposed to ride a horse, and he wanted a stunt double, and other people wanted him to have a stunt double. And the producer said, we can't hire a stunt double. We don't have it in the budget. So they didn't do a stunt double, and he fell off his horse, broke his hip or his pelvis
He had
or
a
something.
stroke and died.
Well, no, he broke his pelvis, and then in the hospital he had a heart attack.
I thought it was a stroke, but okay.
Yeah, he died. He didn't die instantly.
Yeah,
he died.
He died.
He died soon
He
thereafter.
died as a result of
It's
this event.
way more horrific than what you're describing.
Yeah, it's awful. It's awful.
Genuinely awful. And the only reason that it sounds like we're joking is because it's terrible and we don't know how to deal with this.
Yeah, like you laugh to keep from crying, I guess. It's awful.
So thank you for bringing us down, talking about Roy Kinnear, who's really funny. Do you have a favorite like Roy Kinnear scene? Because I think I know what might be your favorite.
What is that?
So there's There's a whole thing in the book that we didn't really get into, which is the Comte de Ward. We keep mentioning the Comte de Ward, and the Comte de Ward is someone who Milady is really into. D'Artagnan has a fight with him and messes him up really badly, and takes a letter from him that lets him go to England, and then the Comte de Ward comes back later. In this movie, they make the decision to eliminate the Comte de Ward. He's not in it at all, but what they've done is they've taken Rochefort, who's played by Christopher Lee, and he's amazing. And they've elevated him to not just being Rochefort and not just being the Cardinal's right-hand man, but he's also Milady's lover.
Mm-hmm.
So he's the Comte de Ward. So we get the scene where they have their duel like in the forest at night, and he and D'Artagnan are really going at it, and he's really got D'Artagnan on the ropes, and he's about to skewer him when Planchet runs up behind Rochefort with a tree that he has uprooted and hits him with the tree. But it's Richard Lester, so it's really goofy.
It was so funny.
And we see him like running through the woods toward them, just going, coming. And it's, like, I'm ruining it. Obviously, I'm ruining it. It's not as funny now.
It's a really funny visual joke. I wrote down what it felt like to watch this, because Rochefort like stabs D'Artagnan. And so I was like, oh my God, he ran him through. And you go, this movie's brutal.
It's a really brutal movie.
And then suddenly it's just boom, gets hit on the head with a tree stump and falls down.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
This movie, I mean, can I talk about the fight choreography for a second?
You can.
It's some of the best fight choreography I've ever... Let me rephrase that. It's some of the most interesting fight choreography I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because it's the messiest fight choreography. I mean, I feel like anyone who's trying to make a Three Musketeers show or movie, the goal that they're going for is the greatest swordsmanship ever shown on film.
Yeah.
They want to be the Cliffs of Insanity and the Princess Bride.
Yeah.
And they either succeed, some of them have incredibly good fencing,
yeah,
or they fail. The Jeremy Brett TV show, the fencing's kind of a mess.
Yeah.
And that's fine. They had $1 to spend on the whole thing.
Yeah.
This one, though, is something I feel like I never see, which is really, really, really well choreographed, terrible sword fighting.
Yeah.
Like, these people look like they're trying to kill each other.
Yeah.
It looks like a real sword fight where death is actually one of the options.
Yeah.
Because they will use anything they can at any moment to survive. Anyone who's fighting. If they have a pot, they can throw at someone. If they have clothes on a line, they can throw at someone.
Tree.
If they have a tree, anything they can use to gain the upper hand and not die is something that they will use. And so on the one hand, it's really funny. Like, it's almost slapstick, but slapstick is never dangerous.
Yeah.
Like, I never watched slapstick going, man, people are really getting hurt. With this one, people get hurt. People die. Like, after Rochefort stabs D'Artagnan runs him through, and he survives, only to get run through again later.
Yeah.
Like, people die horribly with this. It's some of the most interesting fight choreography I've ever seen. I loved it.
There's 2 more actors that we have to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
One is Spike Milligan.
Yes.
R.I.P. again. Like I say, I look up whether anyone's still alive. He's my favorite Bonacieux.
Yeah.
He's just so funny. I don't know if people know who Spike Milligan is. He was like an influence on Monty Python. Like his comedy was like a big influence on them, just sort of like kind of absurdist and weird.
This is the second time, like, we talk about the Ritz brothers being this like weirdly influential group of people who just never really made it big in popular film.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't know them, but people in American comedy knew the Ritz brothers.
Yeah.
People in British comedy
know Spike Milligan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like any comedy troupe you've ever heard of, including Monty Python, was influenced by Spike Milligan.
Yeah.
And he's just really funny. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, it's a very over the top portrayal of how weird and old and gross Bonacieux is.
Towards Raquel Welch, who's so very pretty.
It's just really funny. He's just really, really funny.
That's another thing we haven't mentioned is so many times in the different adaptations, Bonacieux is not her husband.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of times he's her uncle or she's his ward or something like that. In this one, like, no, it is his wife.
Yes.
And he wants to have sex with her
that's all
the time.
That's all he wants. But he's like, she spends 6 nights at the palace. It's so great. She spends 1 night with me. It's fine. I love it. We have to talk about somebody else.
Who do we have to talk about?
We have to talk about Charlton Heston.
Oh, he is in this, isn't he?
We have to talk about how Charlton Heston is in this movie.
Yep. Friend of the pod, Charlton Heston making
never shall be.
He's definitely been in 5 episodes.
Okay. 10 Commandments.
Yep.
Airplane.
Planet
of the Apes.
Yep.
The Bad Sherlock Holmes.
Yep. Wuthering Heights.
and this. That's
Yep.
6.
He's been in at least 6.
At least 6, maybe
if
more.
we're not forgetting about any.
Which we may be. But he will never be friend of the pod.
No.
He's nemesis of the pod. So, okay. So, this is very unfair that Charlton Heston, who I can't stand, has to be friend of the pod, whereas Jeremy Brett, who had the misfortune to die tragically young before he could make enough films to even qualify him to be a 5-time friend of the pod. Here's what I'm saying. Jeremy Brett, honorary friend of the pod. We've talked about him 3 times. We've exhausted his repertoire. Charlton Heston will never be friend of the pod.
We haven't done My Fair Lady. We do My Fair Lady. Jeremy Brett becomes official friend of the pod.
It's still only 4.
No, that's 5.
Okay. Charlton Heston will never be friend of the pod.
Enemy of the pod.
Enemy of the pod. Nemesis of the pod.
Here's the other thing about this.
Yes.
This Richelieu is so good.
He's so good. He's really good at this.
It's really good. Is this, let me ask you this. Is this your favorite Charlton Heston role that we've watched so far?
The one I've enjoyed watching the most?
Sure, yeah. Favorite might be the wrong word for it, but is this the one you've enjoyed the most?
No.
No? What is?
Airplane.
Okay.
Because he's so bad and I love it so much.
This is my favorite one.
Or Airport. I'm sorry. Airport 1975.
Yeah.
That was so funny. I was like, do you remember? I was like, what's wrong with his stomach? Something weird is going on with his stomach. And you were like, he's wearing a girdle. Good times. R.I.P. Charlton Heston. Sure his family loved him.
Oh, Treasure Island too. 7 episodes.
God damn it.
I think his family did love him. His son directed him in Treasure Island. 7 episodes.
7 episodes.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. And probably more to come. Like, you never know.
Yeah.
He's
but
been in a lot.
Like, getting back to it, though, this Richelieu is perfect. Like, this is I think the closest Richelieu to the book. He's really conniving. He's really subtle. Very opportunistic. They take every single great Richelieu moment from the book and put it in this. But they even invent some, too. I think one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie is he and Rochefort are having a conversation. So you have Charlton Heston playing opposite Christopher Lee, which is not a thing that I knew I needed in my life.
Yeah.
But here we are. 2 very tall actors.
Very tall.
And they have an interaction that I feel like I never see between like a supervillain and their henchmen.
Yeah.
Which is Rochefort has failed. Richelieu's not happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
But Rochefort does not grovel. He doesn't ask for forgiveness or anything. He goes, I failed. Sometimes that happens. I don't want it to happen, but sometimes it happens. And then like later in the scene, and Richelieu is like, yeah, I can't really argue with that. Later in the scene, he says to Rochefort something along the lines of like, do you love me? Because he's his cardinal.
Yeah.
He says, I do. I hate you too.
Yeah.
He like says it to his face.
Yeah.
It is a fascinating scene.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of the best scenes in the whole thing. I guess before we move on, the only other thing I have to say about these, because I think the Three Musketeers is like as perfect an adaptation as you can get. Four Musketeers, I think, is very, very good and has a lot in it that I really enjoy. I don't know, something about it didn't really hit me the same way the first one did. Did you notice kind of a difference between the two of them, or do you feel like it was just one thing?
Well, I'll tell you what.
Yeah?
I took a bunch of notes for part 1. This is the notes that I took for part 2.
There's no notes.
There's no notes.
The second one is going through the plot of the second half of the book. We have the siege at La Rochelle. It does a lot of the stuff from the book in a really good way.
Mm-hmm.
It does kill Constance.
Yeah.
Milady does not poison her as she does in the book. Instead, she strangles her.
Yeah.
It does its own version of a really big action-packed end, which does not happen in the book.
Yeah.
Where they are all at the convent where Constance is being murdered. D'Artagnan finds her and then immediately wants revenge. Rochefort is there with the Cardinal's guards, and he fights Rochefort and kills him, which is very action-packed.
Yes.
Not in the book.
Yeah.
And I thought it worked. Like, I actually really enjoyed the last half hour of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It just takes a long time to get there.
Yeah.
I don't know, something about it. The magic just wasn't there for the second one.
Yeah. No, I agree.
But other than that,
It's pretty fun.
And there's still great stuff in the second one. Like, if you look at it as just one whole, the second half's not quite as fun as the first half, but it's still really, really fun. And I'm going to go ahead and say my favorite Three Musketeers that we watched.
There it is.
And I think the best adaptation. It's perfect. Okay, I'm going to make a guess.
Okay.
My guess is this next one is the one.
Yeah.
This is the entree of this meal.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one that people are tuning in for. Because I'm thinking about our audience.
Yep.
Not as a whole, but I feel like our audience skews toward the 1993 Disney Three Musketeers.
Excuse millennial, our audience.
I would say.
Yes, elder millennial.
Mm-hmm. It certainly was the one I think we were the most excited for.
Yeah. No, I did this whole episode. I did all of this
Mhm.
just so we could watch this movie. That was the only reason.
And how do you feel now that we've done it?
You know, sometimes you have a really great memory of something. Perhaps it was a movie that you saw in the theater
Mhm.
in 1993 and remember from that time. And saw perhaps on VHS many, many, many times subsequent to that.
I feel like you're doing the Athos thing. I had a friend once.
I had a friend
once who saw the Three
saw
Musketeers in the theater.
a movie. And then
And
maybe
then years later, she watched it again for her podcast.
20
My friend, not me.
years pass since the last time this person has seen this movie. And they watched it again. And it's maybe not as good as they remember. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I've never seen anybody at the end of their TED Talk just bolt, just absolutely run off the stage. Not because the crowd is booing, but because they're desperately afraid that the crowd is going to start booing.
The end. We can move on.
I also loved this movie. I also saw this movie in the theater. I watched this movie so many times. I actually kind of figured out while we were watching it that this movie's a little bit of a root for me
Okay.
in terms of like how much I love movies and how much I love the making of movies and behind the scenes stuff. This was one of the first times that I ever remember watching like a behind the scenes clip of a movie,
Mm-hmm.
because I remember watching this on the Disney Channel when I was like it came out in 93, and then so it was probably on the Disney Channel by like 95 or something like that.
Sure.
So I was 12.
God, what a simpler time that it took like 2 years
Yeah.
for anything to be available on home media.
Mm-hmm. And I remember this clip that they would show, like you could watch the movie and then they had this like half-hour thing about how they made the movie. And I remember them talking, like what they talk about, I still remember. Like I still remember the specific camera stuff they were talking about. And I remember there's some stuff that is like vividly burned in my brain. It's not worth actually talking about here, but I think the Three Musketeers is one of the first experiences I ever had, like seeing how movies were made
Yeah.
and being really interested in it. So I loved this movie.
Yeah.
And then we watched it, and I didn't love it nearly as much as I used to. In fact, I didn't love it. I didn't like it. And thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Great. All right. So
So in 2001,
wait.
I don't want to.
You've gone too far.
I don't want to do this one.
You have to do it.
But I don't want to.
We did the whole thing just so we could do this thing. You made me read a 10,000 page book just so we could do this movie.
But I'm going to make people
a 40
mad.
million page book
Okay.
I read
I will.
under protest.
Can I read you my first note from this Three Musketeers?
Yes.
This is as good as I remember.
Yeah.
This movie starts strong. Like, I'm not going to lie.
It's very interesting that you say that because the very first note that I had was, I don't remember an underground boat in the book. I started to get a feeling that this movie might be a little weird. Just sort of a slight, premonition in the back of my head. So I didn't go into it maybe as optimistic as it sounds like you did.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because up until this point, we'd been watching all these going, well, what are they going to do? Are they going to do the diamonds? Or are they going to do La Rochelle and Milady going to Britain?
Mm-hmm.
Or are they going to do both or just one?
Buckingham and the Count de
Yeah.
Wards. They don't do any of that.
I'd completely forgotten that they just went in a completely different direction with this.
Yeah.
Like I said at the beginning, our rule was it has to be about a young man named D'Artagnan coming to Paris and meeting the Three Musketeers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what this is, but they kind of went off in a crazy direction.
Yeah, I mean, it has Milady in it, and she did used to be married to Athos, and they do kind of murder her a little bit at the end.
No, they don't. They try to, and
They
she
try
says,
to.
no, only I get to murder me.
Yeah. It does have the young boy king and his wife.
Yep.
It does have...
They have a crush on each other.
Yep.
It's very
It
sweet.
does have Cardinal Richelieu
Mm-hmm.
doing machinations because he wants to be the king?
You know what?
Question mark?
Here's the deal. Richelieu is my problem with this movie.
Okay.
Not Tim Curry.
Yeah. He's played by
Richelieu.
Tim Curry, we should
Yes.
mention.
Not to who now, by our new metric, has become an official friend of the pod.
Is he officially?
Yeah.
Okay. Wait. Clue?
Yep. One.
Muppet Treasure Island, obviously.
Yep.
Three Musketeers.
Yep.
The
The Hunt for Red October.
Hunt for Red October. Oh, in that bad Addams Family movie?
Yes.
Oh, no.
This is his 5th episode.
There you go.
Official friend of the pod. Does that make you feel a little bit better about the Charlton Heston thing?
Yeah, it makes me feel a little better.
Not only that,
Charlton Heston will never be friend of the pod.
this is the 2nd time we've seen Tim Curry play a role that was previously played by Charlton Heston.
Well, that's kind of fun. I'm just saying, Charlton Heston, I think, I couldn't say for sure. If you go back and look at the tapes, I think Charlton Heston might be the most frequently appearing actor on this podcast.
Yeah.
I think he is.
Mm-hmm.
But he'll never be friend of the pod.
Peek behind the curtain, I've been trying to run the data on this. I just can't find a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Except by doing it by hand.
Yeah.
And I don't want to.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to do that.
I mean, there are even more that we could do with Charlton Heston. I actually kind of someday maybe want to do Ben-Hur because
Yeah.
I've always kind of wanted to read the book Ben-Hur.
Half of the hosts of the show have been pushing for Ben-Hur real hard since the beginning.
Yeah, and there's a newer version.
Oh,
I've never seen it. I've never seen nor read any of it, so I just thought it would be fun.
Mhm.
So, anyway, do you want to talk about the cat? I feel like we've skipped really far ahead. You haven't done your usual thing where you talk about the cast and the director and everything.
I mean, if you go back to my original point, I think this is the one everybody already knows about. But you're right. We have a job to do.
Okay.
1993, Disney releases The Three Musketeers. Turns out Disney was one of 3 studios who, in the early 90s, who got a bug up their ass to make a new Three Musketeers adaptation. Did you know that Oliver Platt was being considered for Porthos in multiple adaptations of The Three Musketeers?
I did not know that.
Basically, what ended up happening was someone who was hired to write the screenplay for one studio was also hired, David Lowery, who wrote the screenplay for this one, also was writing a screenplay for The Three Musketeers for a different studio, but Disney hired him, so nothing that was in that script could appear in this script. Maybe that's one of the reasons why it kind of goes off the rails.
Oh, that makes sense. Maybe the other script was more true to the book.
Maybe.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
I didn't even think about that until I said it.
Yeah,
I'm so glad we get to talk about these
honestly,
things.
that's probably exactly why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Disney went off and did its own thing, and I feel like it just got to the point where the other studios said, you know what, we don't give a shit anymore. We're going to do other stuff.
Just do your Three Musketeers.
By the end of it,
Go fight with swords.
the mouse won.
Yeah.
And in 1993, we got this. It was directed by Stephen Herrick, making his second appearance on the show. He did the Glenn Close 101 Dalmatians remake. He also directed, and I mentioned it then, Critters, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and The Mighty Ducks. So this guy is a cool guy in my book, and I'd love to have a drink with him at some point. Screenplay by David Lowery, as I said. I have been doing this thing through the other ones where I've been kind of saying, well, here's a couple of people who are in it. I love this movie, even though I don't like this movie.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about all the people who are in it.
Great.
So can we start with the Three Musketeers?
Yes.
Let's start with the person who gets top billing. Now, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
It is unfair for me to ask you to guess who got top billing because you saw it.
I actually don't know who got top billing.
Oh, who do you think got top billing in this Three Musketeers?
Kiefer Sutherland?
Nope.
Charlie Sheen?
Yes.
Okay.
Charlie Sheen, Aramis gets top billing, which is weird for me in retrospect.
It's weird.
But
he's very good in this.
He's very good in it.
I think he's really good in it.
I think he's a little miscast.
I don't know. I think he's fun.
I have a slight proposal to make in terms of the casting. Maybe we can do that a little bit later.
Sure.
Charlie Sheen plays Aramis.
Yep.
Kiefer Sutherland is Athos.
Yep.
I think he's an amazing Athos.
Mhm.
I think no beef. He's great. No problem whatsoever. Oliver Platt is Porthos.
Yes. Perfectly cast.
Perfectly cast. It's a little broad, but I'll allow it.
It's very fun.
That's basically my thing about it. It is a little. I don't think I would have made the decision to go as broad with him as they did, but I'm fine with it.
Now, what early 90s pretty boy did they get to play of a stable of early 90s pretty boys? Who was ultimately cast as D'Artagnan?
It was obviously Chris O'Donnell. Who else was it going to be? It's going to be Chris O'Donnell.
Leonardo DiCaprio?
Probably. I don't think he was old enough at that point.
You don't think so?
No.
I think he was. I bet he was in contention.
I think Chris O'Donnell. I am endlessly fascinated with mid-90s Hollywood's mission to make Chris O'Donnell a bad boy.
Yeah.
I love it. I love seeing it in this. Because have you seen Batman Forever?
Yeah, probably at some point. I
Yeah.
think you probably made me watch it.
I think I may have.
Yeah.
It's a rare episode I get to talk about Superman movies and Batman movies.
It
but
took me this long to remember the name. Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
There's no way he was old enough in 93 to do this.
I think he was still a teen heartthrob.
Yeah, he was a tween heartthrob
Yeah.
at that point. Here's the deal. Batman Forever tried to do it. Three Musketeers tries to do it. They try to make Chris O'Donnell a bad boy.
Yeah.
Because D'Artagnan, we keep talking about him, beautiful idiot, but he's a bad boy, right?
Yeah.
He's a bit of a bad boy.
Yes.
He's got the leather jacket.
Okay.
Like, if it was modern day, he'd have a leather jacket.
All right.
Chris O'Donnell is a pretty boy.
Yeah.
And that's my problem with Chris O'Donnell in this
Yeah.
and in Batman.
Yeah.
He's a pretty boy. I actually think, this is my big controversial statement, I think Chris O'Donnell would have made a fantastic Aramis. And I think Charlie Sheen, a little bit of a bad boy, would have made a great D'Artagnan.
That would not have worked at all.
I know it wouldn't have worked in terms of ages. What I'm saying is the type. I
Yeah.
think they needed a Charlie Sheen type for D'Artagnan.
Yeah.
And I think they needed a Chris O'Donnell type for Aramis.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy them both a lot in this movie.
Yeah. I gotta say, like, if you sat me down either before I had watched this movie upon this viewing
Mhm.
or after and said, what actually is the plot of this movie?
Would you have been hard pressed?
I mean, I am hard pressed. I remember the part of him coming to town and like hanging out in bars and doing fights.
Yep.
And
You say him, D'Artagnan, right?
D'Artagnan. And I remember the plot of like the king and the young king and his young wife and Tim Curry. And then at the end, I remember Milady jumping off a cliff. And
Well, everybody remembers Milady jumping off a cliff.
I could not tell you what happens in between.
I would have been hard pressed to remember what the goal was for the villain,
Yeah.
because it's not stealing diamonds.
No, I don't recall.
And it's not crushing the Protestants at La Rochelle or killing Buckingham. It's none of those things.
I feel like this movie does not do a great job in sort of setting up the world and then being internally consistent with the motivations of the characters.
Yeah.
I just don't think it does exposition great, which is a funny thing for me to say because we usually say there's too much exposition, but like I think maybe it could have used more.
Would it have been good if there had been a thing at the beginning of like some scrolling text on the screen with like a very serious voice like saying,
I think so because like
France,
at the
16...
at the beginning of the film, the Musketeers have just been disbanded and everyone's kind of mad and having some
Which doesn't make any sense
feelings
considering
about
they've only been around for 2 years.
Well, they've only been around for 2 years, and yet D'Artagnan's father somehow was a musketeer and also failed to protect the king. So this is
Like-
the whole thing. Like the king, the previous king was assassinated, which is historically true,
Yes.
historically accurate. But it was through no fault of the musketeers who did not exist at that time. But they seem to be putting that on D'Artagnan's father specifically. And D'Artagnan then comes to Paris, I almost said London, finds out that the Musketeers have been disbanded, and he's like, oh, I gotta go do a thing. My father, he was a Musketeer, and he's talking to all these Musketeers, and none of them give any sign that they, like, recognize his name or knew his father. But D'Artagnan is saying, my father died defending the king. Like, that would be someone that would be known to them, presumably. So that's confusing. Just the again, like the sort of internal consistency of the world that they're trying to create just is a little weird to me.
A little inconsistent.
And then you have the king, who is a boy king.
Yep.
I don't remember the actor's name, but I looked him up and he was only 18 at the time. And his wife,
I don't remember who the king was, but Gabrielle Anwar is Queen Anne.
Gabrielle Anwar is Queen Anne. She was like 23 and he was like 18. So they're young people. Like, I think they're trying to set up the idea like this was an arranged marriage and she's come to this court and she's very lonely and she's come from like a different country and she was a princess and now she's the queen and blah, blah, blah. But like, I think it could do with a little bit more exposition. I just remember, so they do the thing where it's like, it's the king's birthday and Richelieu was trying to like set up a party for him. I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember why, because it has nothing to do with wearing diamonds to the party.
Can I do a quick little sidebar?
Yes.
The whole point is Richelieu wants to be king.
Yes.
Which I'm going to put aside my big problem with that for a second. He wants to be king, so his plan is we're going to have a big party for the king's birthday, and I will have him assassinated at the party, and then I will take power.
Right. I remember that. He's got like a sniper on the roof.
Thank you all for attending my TED Talk. As I get started here, let me put the first slide up on the screen. As you can see, it clearly says, this is fucking bullshit. Because that is not a thing that Richelieu would ever want.
Yeah.
Richelieu doesn't want to be king. Richelieu doesn't need to be king. He just wants to be in charge.
Yes.
And the thing is,
He needs the king to be alive to be in charge. What better way to be in charge than have a very
Yeah.
weak king who'll just do whatever you tell him?
it's the best.
Yeah.
Because people will always go by what the king says more than they will the the cardinal who took power.
Yeah.
That's not it bums me out that they have taken an actor that I love and made him say really terrible things, because they turn Richelieu into a mustache twirling, monologuing supervillain who has nothing of the Richelieu from the book.
Yeah.
And it bums me out and I hate it. And we'll probably talk a little bit more about it. But anyway, I'm so sorry.
No, I just there's a scene that I remember very distinctly as a child thinking, I'm confused by this. Richelieu's talking to the king about this birthday party and says, like, you know, the queen asked me to ask you to do this and it's very important to her.
She passed me a note in science.
Yeah. And the king just looks at him with these big puppy dog eyes and goes, "Oh, Anne's coming?"
Yeah.
And I remember even as a kid thinking, like, it's your fucking wife. Like, of course your wife is coming to your birthday party. Like, what a weird way to... They could have chosen any number of ways to kind of telegraph the idea that, like, the king and the queen are not close and perhaps have not even, like, consummated this marriage, which was true.
Perhaps.
But, like, the idea that he would be surprised that she's coming to his birthday party, the king of France.
Now, I know we often on this show we rail against people like hanging a lantern on things.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, would it have made it better or worse if in that moment Tim Curry as Richelieu gave him just a completely dumbfounded look and then said, "Yes, the queen, your wife, is coming to your birthday party"?
Yeah, that would have made it better because...
You think it would have made it better?
I think so, because what he does do is kind of go, "Oh, your majesty, of course she
Oh,
is."
your majesty.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Which doesn't kind of address the fact that it was a ridiculous statement.
Yeah.
I just remember as a kid thinking that was dumb. So he's got this plot.
Mm-hmm.
Milady de Winter is involved somehow.
Can we actually do a thing that we haven't really done?
Sure.
Because I feel like we haven't taken a ton of notes up until this point. I have a lot of notes for this one, so I kind of just want to go through my notes.
Yeah, let's do it.
There's a thing that happens near the beginning of the movie where D'Artagnan shows up at Musketeers' headquarters, and we hear that music. Da 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 da. But because the song that we haven't even really... We sang it, but we didn't mention it. All for Love.
It's a fucking slaps.
It does slap. It's the first time I can think of that I've ever seen that the song gets top billing in the end credits. I have never seen that, where the movie ends and the big song of the movie starts playing, and the first thing that rolls up the screen is All for Love, written by Bryan Adams.
And it's all for one
and all for love.
That's pretty good.
It is a banger. Well, yeah, sweetie, it's in my heart.
Yeah.
It's been in my heart for nigh on 30 years.
It's a really good song.
But the thing is, it was co-written by the composer, Michael Kamen. It was Michael Kamen, I believe. So it's one of those things where, like, the theme from the song appears in the movie, and I wasn't ready for that. I forgot that happened.
Yeah, I noticed it too.
And we grabbed each other. I think I grabbed your arm at that point because, like, my heart was too full at that point. I did write down, this is by far the horniest Richelieu. Do you remember how horny Tim Curry plays
it? He came in when she was in the bathtub.
When
the
Queen
Anne was in the
yeah.
bathtub and was like, "Hello," and she was like, "Could I not be naked in front of you? Maybe." And he's like, "Oh, of course, I'm a man of the cloth. You have nothing to fear." It was horrifying.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's very horny.
No good.
It's horny for everyone.
This is, like, it bums me out that this reminds me more of the Addams Family episode because I'm watching Tim Curry do stuff I don't like.
Yeah.
I'd rather it be like Treasure Island, where I watch Tim Curry doing stuff that I fucking love.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that didn't happen.
Yet here we are. He's a working actor.
This is a thing that I don't get to say on the show very much. He'll never be a friend of the pod officially, but I am so excited he's making his second appearance. Haven't done this since the Robin Hood episode. Michael Wincott is a treasure, and I love Michael Wincott and have always loved Michael Wincott, and he is not in enough movies, and I am so happy that he is making his return in Jordan Peele's Nope, and someone out there knows what I'm talking about. Michael Wincott is a treasure, and he plays Rochefort in this, and it's a Rochefort for the ages. It doesn't reach the heights that Christopher Lee necessarily does, but that's not Michael Wincott's fault. That is the script's fault. And Michael Wincott would have been up to it, but he is just wonderful. Also, the other thing they do here is that instead of D'Artagnan having a grudge against Rochefort, Rochefort has a grudge against D'Artagnan because it was D'Artagnan's dad that took his eye.
Because he was the musketeer that betrayed the king.
Yes.
And he also maybe killed D'Artagnan's dad, unclear.
Here's the problem. Now I'm worried that I'm confusing this one with the 2001 version.
No, it's okay.
I'm going to leave this in the episode.
No, I think you might be right. No, I think you're right. I think it's Fevre that in the we can take this out.
No,
but
I don't want to take it out. I want to leave it. I want people to see how the sausage is made a little bit.
I don't know that I do. I think it might be the other thing that we're
All
thinking about.
Well, I'll go past it.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Either way,
keep going.
Michael Wincott's fantastic.
Plow through.
There's a line in this that I thought was really, really cute. D'Artagnan wants some wine, and Porthos says, "You can't have any. You're too young." And it's like, it just struck me at this point, like, that is such an American joke. It's France.
Yeah.
And they're telling Chris O'Donnell that he's too young to have wine.
France.
Like, he's not 7.
Yeah.
I could see them saying that a 7-year-old kid is too young to have wine. Anyway, just a very American joke for me, a very Disney joke.
Yes.
Here's a big problem I have with this movie that I didn't realize for a long time. I have a question for you. Why is this movie Robin Hood?
It's very Robin Hood. Yeah, you're not wrong.
So the Musketeers have been disbanded. So the whole thing is that our guys are outlaws the entire time.
Yeah, because they're supposed to go and join the military.
Yeah.
And they don't.
And there's a scene where the Musketeers are going around leaving notes for all of the former Musketeers to meet them for the big finale.
At the party.
And then at the party, all of these randos step forward and take their cloaks off, and they're all wearing their, Musketeer tabards underneath them.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing that I have never seen in a Three Musketeers movie, but have seen many, many times in a Robin Hood movie.
Sure.
And it's not the first time that one of these kind of weirdly turns into Robin Hood, but this one did not feel like a Three Musketeers movie. It felt like a Robin Hood movie.
Yeah.
And that's a problem that I have. I want to talk about the king's fencing instructor.
Okay.
Because there's a scene where Richelieu comes to... It's the scene you were talking about where the king's like, my wife is going to be there?
Yeah.
And so the way that scene starts is the king is taking fencing lessons from this guy. And I remember looking at this guy going like, this guy looks too interesting to be a character actor.
Yeah.
I think this is someone, I think it might even be Bob Anderson. And I looked at the cast and it is Bob Anderson.
Who's the sword guy?
Bob Anderson is the sword master. He's the sword master. He was the guy who did the fencing for The Princess Bride.
Yeah.
Empire Strikes Back. Bob Anderson.
Didn't he do Lord of the Rings?
Yes.
Yeah.
Bob Anderson's the guy.
Yeah.
And he gets to be in this movie, and they get to put him in a wig and a mustache as a fencing instructor. And I love it. It's great.
Yeah.
Then the Milady stuff happens. And it happens really, really quickly. And
yeah, she's
really
not in
dramatically.
it much.
She's got, 15 minutes of screen
And
time or
dies,
something like
yeah.
that? It's a lot very quickly.
Like, what is her role in the intrigue? What is she supposed to be doing?
I don't even remember.
Okay, great.
She works for Richelieu and she wants to do a bad thing.
And they find her and they try to do a murder on her, and she does a murder on herself. The end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All I remember is she takes D'Artagnan hostage.
Female character's a little underwritten.
Like, explain this to me. She wants to kill D'Artagnan, so why doesn't she kill him when he's unconscious? Because she, knocks him unconscious.
Yeah.
But instead she waits for him to wake up and has, her men do it?
It's very confusing. I don't understand.
It's very silly.
Yes. Technically, there is a constance in this because the queen does have a servant, and in the credits her name is Constance.
Yep.
But she is not a character who's central to the plot.
Well, I mean, she's central to the plot. She helps D'Artagnan kill Rochefort at the end.
Yeah.
No, she is absolutely central to the plot. Let me talk about all the things she does in this movie. She meets D'Artagnan, appears a second time, and then helps him kill Rochefort in her third appearance in the movie.
There you go.
That's it.
That's it.
But she's Julie Delpy, so she has a genuine French accent.
That's more than you can say for almost anyone else. So
Basically anybody.
that's great.
This movie does a thing with being a musketeer that kind of goes to the stuff you were talking about before in the way it presents, the musketeers have always been here, but now they've been disbanded and there's this great tragedy. Every time D'Artagnan talks about wanting to be a musketeer, it's like he's talking about becoming a knight or becoming a Jedi. Like becoming a musketeer is not those things.
It's
Becoming
just a job you can have.
it's a job. Like it's a commission.
Yeah.
And it's like this movie was made from tropes from other movies that aren't the Three Musketeers. Every time anybody talks about it, anytime he's like, I just want to be a musketeer, it's like, okay, Chris, calm down. I didn't care for that. And here's one of the last things I have. Here's the thing I didn't appreciate at the time. The movie starts with D'Artagnan running away from this guy Gerard because he had kind of a thing with his sister.
Yeah.
Gerard, played by Paul McGann. There's also Jussac, who's the head of the Cardinals Guards that they have a fight with, who D'Artagnan kills. Also Paul McGann.
Very weird. Like it's not the kind of movie that does double casting. It's just not that kind of film.
I kind of love that.
Like it's kind of fun.
It's super fun. It's great.
And we see him again at the end. Like he's got kind of the last little stinger at the end.
Yeah.
That they go back after.
Yeah, after D'Artagnan's become a musketeer and they're running after him. Yeah, the whole thing just blows my mind that they had this guy play two roles and I never knew. Never knew for years. That's all I got to say about this one.
All right. Well, I mean, it was fun.
And it's all for one. And all for love.
If you have great memories of this movie, I don't know. I might not advise watching it again.
Yeah.
But you probably will. Like you're probably gonna listen to this and be like, it's been a long time since I've seen this. I'm gonna go watch it again. And all I have to say is, don't say we didn't warn you. It's not that good.
This movie has fallen in my head, but it has not fallen in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I can't but love this movie.
The song's a banger.
It's a banger. It's so good. I'm going to link to the music video.
All right.
It's so good.
It's real good. Should we move on?
No, I have more things to say about 93.
No, you don't. We're moving on. 2001.
So in 2001, a bunch of people said, we're going to reinvent the Three Musketeers.
Why?
We're going to do it totally differently. Okay, it was directed by Peter Hyams. It was written by Gene Quintano. Stunt choreography. Now, I don't often mention the stunt choreography. I guess I mentioned Bob Anderson a second ago. Stunt choreography by Zhang Xinxin, or I guess his real name is Hong Yanyan, but he's very big in Hong Kong cinema. This movie has the most insane fight choreography of any of the ones that we watched. And there's one later that's got like Mila Jovovich and was directed by Paul W.S. Anderson.
Yeah.
And this has the craziest fight choreography of all of them. It had the unfortunate timing to come out basically the weekend before September 11th.
Great.
Which was, I mean,
not good timing.
It's one of the many reasons why I feel like nobody talks about this movie. Another reason people don't talk about it.
It's not very good.
It's not very good. Even though it
even though it kind of is
well.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say it kind of did well. Like it didn't do badly in the theater. They made back what they spent on it. And it is, and as you say, it's not bad.
I mean, it has something that we haven't seen since that 1966 BBC TV, which is like a scene where two really serious actors are acting the hell out of like this. The scenes between Stephen Ray and Tim Roth is like an acting masterclass.
Yes.
Like you know what I mean? Like Tim Roth is ridiculous in this. Stephen Ray is kind of ridiculous in this, but they're both very serious actors, and seeing them play a scene together can't be otherwise than enjoyable.
Right. So you've just described it in a way that I feel is very charitable.
Okay.
And but still accurate.
Yeah.
But very charitable. I'm going to do the uncharitable version.
Okay.
The problem with the scenes you're talking about are that Stephen Ray plays Cardinal Richelieu.
Yeah.
And Tim Roth plays Febre, the man in black.
Yes.
Who is not Rochefort. Rochefort is in it. Rochefort dies. Febre kills Rochefort?
Yes, I believe.
I'm pretty sure Febre kills Rochefort. So the villain of the movie is Febre, which is weird to have a Three Musketeers movie with Richelieu and Rochefort, and neither of them are the big villains of it.
Yeah.
Like, this goes back to the 35 version where, like, Rochefort is the bad guy, so it's kind of like he's going after the king and Richelieu. This is that same kind of thing, except they've gone another level with it, where this guy's going to take over everything, and he's a wild card. He's a lunatic.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird. I mean, we're skipping way ahead, but like
Sure.
it is this weird thing at the end where Richelieu turns out to be like not that bad of a guy, and everybody's like, "You created this monster, and now you can't control him." And he's like, "All right, you're right. I concede. Go do whatever you got to do. Go kill this guy."
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, he's like, "Yep, everything's fine. I'm not evil. It was this guy that was evil. It wasn't me."
That's what the Republicans are trying to do right now. Just with all the Mar-a-Lago stuff coming out.
Okay, let's
No, I've decided I want to make this a topical show.
let's not make this a topical show. What are you doing? What's happening?
I'm sorry, I won't do it again.
I just thought it was a very odd choice
Yeah.
to like introduce this character. Like it's like someone loved Richelieu so much that they were like, he can't be the villain. I love him.
Yeah.
And so they introduced this other character to be the villain, but like I don't know, I'm just not sure it works. Like he's just so evil.
You're not
He's
sure
like,
it works?
He's like a baby eater. Like he's
Yeah.
so evil. He like literally tries to kill a child. It's no bueno.
I like how
It's
you're surprisingly charitable about this.
I-
Like it almost doesn't work.
it doesn't
Like,
work.
No, it doesn't
It
work.
doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Okay, but yes, you were right. We were getting ahead of ourselves. So
Yes.
let's back up for a second. D'Artagnan is Justin Chambers. The thing that I feel like most people might know him from is Grey's Anatomy.
Mm-hmm.
And he is he just feels like a Southern California heartthrob.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel like a D'Artagnan.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of is a problem the entire movie and never really goes away.
Yeah.
He's a problem.
I have a question
Sure.
that might be sort of dumb in the genre of is a shark a fish?
Okay.
Like something that you might expect me to know.
Yeah.
D'Artagnan.
Yeah.
Is that his first name or his last name?
It's his last name. You know it's his last name.
It's his last name?
Yeah.
Does he have a first name?
I mean, we can assume he does. We've never heard
We
it.
don't know it.
Yeah.
Because in this film, his mom calls him D'Artagnan,
Yes.
which is his last name.
Mhm.
Is that
dumb?
Is that dumb?
Yeah, it's dumb.
There's something wrong with that, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
it's
not
really
his
dumb.
first name; it's his last name.
No, someone made the movie who didn't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It just seems weird to me that made it all the way to the screen and not one person was like, "Hey, isn't that his last name?"
This movie is a surprising movie.
Yeah.
And that's just one of the many things that's right. You know what else surprised me that happens near the beginning?
What's that?
Remember the opening credits sequence?
No.
Okay, so just so everyone knows, we took a break for a second. I had to open the movie back up so you could watch the beginning again.
Yes.
Let's talk about this opening credit sequence.
Yes, it really explained one of my notes to me that I was going to say. I wrote this down and I don't understand what I was talking about. Do you want to know what it was that I wrote down?
I'd love to.
Why is it like this?
Yeah. This is the jankiest opening credit sequence I have ever seen.
Yeah.
In my life.
Well, I asked you, wait, was this a TV movie? And you were like, no. Theatrical release.
It looks like someone made the opening titles in PowerPoint in 1997 and took pictures from the film.
Yeah.
Applied some kind of effect to them.
Some filter to
like
make them look kind of pixelated.
Yeah, some filter that was called oldie-timey.
Yeah.
That puts like a border around it. But like it has a border around it.
Yeah.
And then the text is like the kind of thing that like doesn't look oldie-timey. It looks like something you'd find in a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, it's really weird.
And it's weird because the whole thing is playing under, I want to say it's David Arnold doing the music for it. So the music's actually really good, but the opening credits are the ugliest thing I have ever seen.
Yeah. So I would like to submit a hypothesis.
Yes.
Who wrote this movie? What's the writer's name?
Gene Quintano.
I believe that Gene Quintano was sitting down to write this movie, was short on inspiration, and flipped on the TV and started watching The Princess Bride and was like, that's a good movie. How about we just do that? Because here are the things. Before the credits even roll, we have basically the Inigo Montoya and Man in Black six-fingered man scene where he comes and kills his father.
Well, it's all combined because
Yeah.
the Man in Black is a different person.
The Man in Black is a different person, but Inigo, we have little D'Artagnan as Inigo Montoya swearing revenge on this guy that has come to kill his father.
Mhm.
And then we have a large, deep-voiced Frenchman, and I said to you,
Jean-Pierre Castaldi, by the way, plays Planchet
I
in
said,
this.
why does he sound just like Andre the Giant? So we have this Planchet as sort of the older
He's Obi-Wan.
mentor, yeah. And then later, there's a scene that is literally the "oh, that gate key" scene from The Princess Bride, where they're like, "I need the key to this thing," and he's like, "Some guy's like, I don't have it," and the other guy's like, "Yeah, okay, well, I'm just gonna beat it out of
I'm
you
just
then."
gonna tear your arms off.
And the guy's like, "Oh yeah, here, the key that you meant," and it's literally the word for word, almost word for word, the same scene from Princess Bride. But I think the thing that kept bringing it back to my mind is that Planchet, if you close your eyes and listen to his voice, he sounds just like Andre the Giant.
Yeah.
So, which is also weird because everyone else in this movie does not have French accents.
No, just Planchet.
Just Planchet.
Well, Catherine Deneuve plays the queen.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, she plays an older queen.
An older queen.
And,
yeah.
They go all over the place with it.
Yeah.
No, I want to stick on the Obi-Wan thing for a second. Planchet he's also Alfred, kind of.
Yeah.
Because,
I can see that.
D'Artagnan's parents have
Master
both died in
Bruce.
front of him, and
Yes.
he's just like, what do you want me to do? And little D'Artagnan is like, I want you to train me to be a musketeer.
So I can kill that guy.
So I can kill that guy. And that's how they treat it. Like, I know I already made the joke about a movie treating being a musketeer like being a Jedi. I feel bad that I already mentioned it because this is really the one where I started to feel that way.
Yeah.
And that's literally how they treat it throughout the entire thing. And Planchet is a ridiculous person who is Obi-Wan and Alfred all rolled into one, and also has those dumb little, the guns that people have in their sleeves where they go and they like shoot their arms out and suddenly there's guns in their hands. Like, he's got those stupid guns.
Yeah, it's very weird.
Which is very dumb, and I can't stand it. And this Planchet is played by an actor who was super, super fun, and I have no problem with. But the version of Planchet, what they were going for, is very stupid, and I didn't care for it. So we've got Justin Chambers, who's a Grey's Anatomy pretty boy, playing D'Artagnan poorly.
Yeah.
And I know that's uncharitable, but I think he probably knows that too. And I think he wanted, like every young actor, he wanted a new franchise. He was hoping they would make more of these, and I don't blame the guy at all. We mentioned Tim Roth. We mentioned Stephen Ray. Stephen Ray plays kind of a nothing Cardinal Richelieu because he's not the villain.
They have that one good scene together that I thought was very good.
Yeah.
And
Tim Roth.
Yeah, he and Tim Roth. And then we have Mina Suvari as Constance.
Francesca Bonacieux.
Oh, Francesca, yes.
Francesca.
I forgot it was Francesca.
She's a modern heroine.
Yes.
She doesn't need no man.
Except she does.
No, yeah, except she does.
And then they do sexy times, and she's very liberated.
What accent would you say that Mina Suvari is doing?
I
in
mean,
this movie?
she's just doing
her and Justin Chambers. Actually,
they're sort of kind of doing like mid-Atlantic mixed with Southern California. I would say both of them, but like the two of them kind of match accents. But I did write in all caps accents because I found that the accents in this were very strange and very inconsistent.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the Musketeers.
Yeah.
Blows me away. I mean, it is called The Musketeer.
Yeah.
It's not called The Three Musketeers. It's called The Musketeer.
Correct.
Because D'Artagnan is the most badass person who's ever existed.
Right.
And all the Musketeers look up to him because, boy, they needed him. They needed him to swoop in and save the day. So we get, at the beginning of the movie, Aramis and Porthos. And Aramis is Nick Moran, who is an actor I don't see in too many things, but I really enjoy him. Steve Spears as Porthos. He was very good in this. You had like a great poll while we were watching. You were like, I don't remember who or what he played, but I think he's in Topsy Turvy. And in fact, he was in Topsy Turvy.
Yes, a minor character.
Mm-hmm. And then it takes a really long time before we meet Athos, who's German for some reason, played by Jan Gregor Kremp.
Yep.
It is weird to me that Athos is basically a side character in a Three Musketeers movie.
Yeah.
Like, the idea that Athos is the most minor of the Musketeers, he's basically not in it.
Yeah.
Like, if you removed Athos from this movie, the movie would be no different.
Well, this is going to be a dumb question, but I don't really remember. Milady is in this?
Milady does not appear in this movie.
Yeah, there's no Milady, right?
No, Febre is Milady.
It's just Febre.
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 F-E-B-R-E.
Febre.
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 Yeah.
Yeah, there's no Milady. It's just Febre. So like Athos.
Buckingham's in it.
Yeah, but like Athos's whole thing is that he used to be married to Milady, and if there's no Milady, there's nothing really for Athos to do.
Right. So he's nothing.
Right.
And it is it's a bummer.
Yeah.
And then Febre just gets bigger and bigger. He becomes the bad guy. As you say, he threatens to kill a kid because he wants to make the queen write a letter to Buckingham.
To say like, don't do a war.
Don't do, or do a war. Do a war.
Do come. I love you.
The thing is, Febre wants a war.
Yeah.
I can't remember if having the queen write "do a war" or "don't do a war" is part of his plan. But
Some
either
letter
way,
situation.
he wants her to say a thing, and she says, "No, I will not write this letter. I am Catherine Deneuve. I'm very pretty, and I will not write this letter." And then he brings a kid in and puts a gun to the kid's head.
And the
It's
kid's like,
write the letter. And she's like, okay, I will write this letter for you. And then it is a little cute because as we said before, this movie is kind of fun.
yeah.
Like, it's not unfun. And there's a thing that happens in a little bit where D'Artagnan shows up where they were keeping the queen and Francesca, and this little girl is there, and she's like, hey, basically says like, hey, Febra, that guy, can you kill him for me, please?
He tried to murder me.
I'm
I'm only a child.
Yeah, I am a kid. I am just a sweet, sweet kid. Can you please kill him hard?
And they do.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I only had 2 more notes. One of them is we need to talk about poor Strega, the magic horse. Remember D'Artagnan's horse Strega?
Oh yeah, it
who's
like dies a bunch of times.
The entire time
yeah.
and like is almost dead and then isn't dead and then is almost dead, and he runs the horse so bad that the horse has to like faint in a field and he has to run the rest of the way into Paris.
You really
and
don't
then he tells someone later, like, can you go get my horse? And it's like, dude, your horse is dead. Your horse is gone.
You really don't want any scene with a horse putting you in mind of like one of the most horrific horse scenes of all time, which is the end of True Grit.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want that. You don't want any horse stuff to be reminiscent of that. And we were both thinking the same thing. We're like, is this like the end of True Grit? This is awful.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the horse stuff was not fun.
Yep. I only have one more, but it ties into the thing that makes this movie special, and it makes it different than every other Three Musketeers movie. The stunt work. I talked about it before. The stunt work is insane and impressive. Like, I'm not going to lie, it's impressive. I enjoyed the stunts in the movie. Oftentimes, they have people doing things that are very stupid. Remember that thing D'Artagnan does at the beginning where he's up in the rafters?
Yeah.
And he's, like, kind of swinging back and forth, completely exposed, and the 4 guys underneath him with swords have about 50 opportunities to kill him.
Yeah.
But he thinks this is good defense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
There
do
is
remember that.
There is a thing that happens at the end where he has to scale a tower to get to Francesca and the Queen in Buckingham. So he's on a rope. So a bunch of Febra's men go, we see him down there. We also have ropes. Here is what we will do. We'll swing out on our ropes, but we won't make our ropes nearly as long because we want to kill him. But the best news is we don't need to stab him or anything. We just need to cut his rope so he falls to his death.
Yep.
But instead, that's not what they do. Instead, what they do is they say, we'll make our ropes exactly as long as his to have a fight in midair where he will definitely kill us all.
Yes.
And it is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. For me, it is the pinnacle of the stunts do not match the plot. Because what they should want is to kill D'Artagnan, not have a big flashy midair fight.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't make any sense. But instead what they have is a big flashy midair fight.
Yeah.
And then the movie's over, and it's very dumb, but weirdly compelling, and we had a lot of fun with it, even though it is very dumb.
Yes. In some contrast to the next 2 things that we're going to talk about, and I don't know if you have a lot on the 2011 Three Musketeers.
Can I make a proposal?
Yes.
I would like to do something a little weird. I'd like to talk about the 2014 version first.
Okay.
Because I don't want to end on it.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. So in 2011, there was a movie. We'll get back to it. In 2014, there was a series that came out. Ran for 3 series. So on BBC America. Created by Adrian Hodges, called The Musketeers.
Yes.
And I had really high hopes for it because I had seen like images of the cast. And I thought, like, man, all these guys look really good.
And this was like the style at the time to do like these sort of period TV series adaptations. There was a Robin Hood one. I think there were a couple other ones that we've like briefly looked at. This was like really, I think, the fashion at the time.
And here's the thing. I was really excited about it, but the reason I wanted to talk about it first is because we don't really have much to say about it.
Yeah.
Because we watched the first episode together. Like, would you agree with me there was some stuff that the show really had going for it in the first episode?
No.
Not at all?
No.
Not even the casting?
I thought it was so bad.
You thought the casting wasn't good?
Yes.
I loved the casting.
Okay.
I thought it was great. So Tom Burke plays Athos. Santiago Cabrera plays Aramis. Howard Charles is Porthos. You had a really fun observation about the actor who plays Porthos.
Oh, I did. Yeah. I said it was very interesting. Yeah. So they are doing the thing where they are trying to bring a little bit more representation and diversity to this television program, which I give them all props for, despite the fact that it was not very good in other respects. I said to you, have you ever seen a picture of Alexandre Dumas? And you said, yes, I have. And I said, do you not agree that the actor playing Porthos kind of looks like him? And you were like, yes, he does a little bit. Not just because of their racial background, but like literally his face kind of looks like Alexandre Dumas.
Yeah.
But I don't know if many people know this. I feel like this is becoming a more common thing to talk about recently is that Alexandre Dumas, the French author of Three Musketeers, was an author of color. His mother, I believe, was Haitian.
Mhm.
And so I just find that very interesting that I think we like assume he was white because, like, of course, like
He's oldie-timey French guy.
oldie-timey French guys are white, but he wasn't. And I just liked that, like, not only did they cast someone who I don't know, appears to me to be multiracial, but he actually just looked like the author, and I thought that was kind of fun.
I appreciated that observation.
Yes.
And then Luc Pasqualino as D'Artagnan.
Yes.
The one thing I think I disagree with you about is I think these four are amazing.
Yeah.
And I did watch another episode, and then I stopped, which I'll get to in a second. I thought they were great. I really enjoyed the four of them, and I think the biggest thing that bums me out about the show is that they decided not to make a more straightforward adaptation of the book
Yeah.
with all of these different priorities. Instead, they just decided to make their own thing that had nothing to do with the Three Musketeers that happened to have these characters in it.
Yeah.
So that's my big thing about it. I think these guys are great. The first episode is the closest thing we get to the book The Three Musketeers. And then it goes off the rails.
Yeah.
And
the
the
first episode is not very close.
The episode starts with it derailing. Like
Yeah.
the episode is the first episode is the train derailing, and then the second episode is fully off the rails.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I will say for this television show is that for a property called The Musketeers,
Mhm.
we have not seen a lot of guns up until now. It's mostly sword fighting, and there are a lot of guns in this television series, which I appreciated and I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were about 3/4 of the way through this first episode, and I was like, you realize this has nothing to do with the Three Musketeers. And like for a second, you sort of tried to make the argument that it did, and I was like, no, apart from the character names, what has happened up to now that has any resemblance to the book, The Three Musketeers? And you're like, nothing, but I still
The
think
king
it's really
and the
fun.
queen are in it, and Richelieu. Peter Capaldi plays the
Yeah,
Richelieu.
the character names, the names of the characters.
And D'Artagnan picks fights with all the musketeers.
There's like sort of a detective musketeers thing because Athos has been like unfairly.
That apparently, I read a lot of the plot synopses for the following episodes.
Yeah.
And apparently they do that a lot.
Oh boy.
Okay, we got to the end of the first episode. You said, I'm done. And you
Yes.
tapped out and went to go play Stardew Valley.
Yes. That's
And
probably exactly what happened.
I thought, like with Robin Hood, I went and watched all of it.
Yes.
And I enjoyed all of it sometimes, but I watched all of it. With this one, I thought, I'm going to try to watch as much of it as I can because it's 3 series. I like it so far. Then I watched the second episode, and I was out.
Yeah.
Can I read to you the plot synopsis of the second episode?
Yes, I did not watch this.
The Musketeers engineer D'Artagnan's imprisonment in a cell alongside Vadim, played by Jason Fleming, a notorious criminal who uses the Queen's visit to escape. Vadim has a plan to bring about a people's revolution by killing the King and Queen, but Vadim is a master of sleight of hand, and his plans are more criminal than political. See, there's this criminal, he's a revolutionary, but really what he wants to do is just steal the King and Queen's jewels. That's all he wants to do.
Okay.
And
That's dumb.
I spent the entire episode just going, what the fuck is this? I feel like that sophomore episode is the thing that I always judge shows by. Like, I usually don't judge shows by the pilot
Mhm.
because the pilot is usually more unique than the rest of the show because you're establishing all the characters. And if you're an adaptation, that's your chance to really adapt the source material. But then sometimes the second episode, they either stay close to the source material or they just go off in a totally different direction. And this one goes off in a different direction. It is they tried to make a procedural. It has nothing to do with the Three Musketeers, and I was really mad about it. And I walked in to you, and I interrupted your game of Stardew Valley, and I said, hey, by the way, I'm also out.
Yeah.
This show's dumb.
Yes. That is what happened.
And now we get to backtrack.
Let's backtrack.
Final Three Musketeers. In 2011, a film was released called The Three Musketeers, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. Written by Paul W.S. Anderson and Andrew Davis.
Oh, boy.
If you didn't know that it was Andrew Davis, would you have guessed
No.
that it was?
No, because it's bad.
Mm-hmm. So I had this fun note while we were watching it. I was like, I think this is your first Paul W.S. Anderson movie. It's not my first. And then I texted you the other night with like a list of all his movies. And I'm like, can you just tell me, have you seen any of these?
And I said,
Paul W.S. Anderson did Event Horizon, the first Mortal Kombat movie, Alien vs. Predator. He did 4 of the Resident Evil movies, and I think produced two more. He is married to Mila Jovovich, the star of the Resident Evil movies,
Yeah.
and also plays Milady in this one. He is just one of the modern kings of the bullshit, stupid action movie. And I knew that we were in for a bit of a ride with this one.
Well, I asked you about a quarter of the way through, when did the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes came out? And you looked it up, I think it was 2009.
I think so, yeah.
This was 2011. And I said, I see the influence of
Yeah.
that film on this.
Mhm.
There were a lot of shots that were really similar. There was a lot of tone that was really similar. And at the end of the day, this is a steampunk Three Musketeers. I'm not sure I'm here first. Like, the MacGuffin was literally like a steampunk airship, like a like a blimp.
Yeah. Did you know, by the way, I found out that it's not steampunk.
It's not steampunk.
It's clockpunk.
Okay.
Did you know that there are a whole bunch of like derivatives of cyberpunk?
I mean, that
And
doesn't surprise me at all.
Steampunk is one of them, but
Yeah.
clockpunk is another one.
What's the difference?
I mean,
It's like gears, like
yeah, it's gears instead of steam.
it's gears instead of steam.
It's exactly what you think it is. But apparently this is a clockpunk Three Musketeers and not a steampunk one. So this movie is basically the Italian Job, because the whole thing starts out with our Three Musketeers, Matthew McFadden as Athos, making his fourth appearance on the show, something like that.
Not quite friend of the pod.
No. Ray Stevenson as Porthos Ray Stevenson as Porthos in this movie proves to me that Porthos is easy to cast, because Ray Stevenson's great. I
Yeah.
had no problem with Porthos. He comes through unscathed. It is the character from the book. I had no problems with it. It is obviously not the plot of the book, but I enjoyed him. And Luke Evans as Aramis.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say this, all of these three characters were well-defined and differentiated.
Sure.
Which is not a thing I can say about previous versions. I enjoyed all of them.
Yeah.
Logan Lerman as D'Artagnan? I don't know. But anyway, the movie starts with the Three Musketeers and Milady as a group breaking into a place in Italy.
They're doing a
and
heist.
They're doing a
some
heist.
kind of heist.
They're doing a heist. And then at the end of the heist, Milady betrays them.
Yes.
She's also super, super kissy-kissy with Athos.
Yes.
They got a whole thing going on. And she betrays them. And we've seen them do crazy stunts and flippy dips, and they're very badass secret agents. Because that's what the Musketeers are in this movie. They're secret agents.
Yes.
They're not just a bunch of guys who hang out
with swords.
with swords. They're secret goddamn agents. And then we cut ahead a year. And a year later, Logan Lerman is this kid D'Artagnan who wants to come to Paris to be a musketeer. I didn't like Logan Lerman in this.
Yeah, you
Feel-
liked him in 310 to Yuma.
I didn't like him in 310 to Yuma. Did I? What? No, I didn't.
No, you thought he was dumb in 310 to Yuma.
I thought he was dumb in 310 to Yuma, but like I don't think it's his fault. I just think it's just unfortunate casting twice. I'm doing 310 to Yuma on the other show right now.
I'll never stand in your shoes. What was it?
Yeah, it's I'll never walk in your shoes. But he's got one leg.
One
There's
goddamn leg.
such a miss for a joke. Anyway, everything is just folding in on itself at this point. So it's a year later, he goes, and the Musketeers have been disbanded. So they just keep doing the same thing over and over again. And he meets the Musketeers, and they're like, we hate you. And he's like, I hate you. But then they're like, we're friends. And he's like, we're friends. And then they're all best friends, and they fight the Cardinals guards. And like it's kind of a good news, bad news situation. It's kind of a good news, bad news, good news situation. The good news is the Cardinals guards are led by Rochefort, played by Mads Mikkelsen, who I love so much. The bad news is it is balls to the wall. So instead of like 7 Cardinals guards showing up to fight 4 of our guys, it's 100 of them, and they take out all of them.
Yeah.
And in an unbelievably badass way. And I say unbelievably in that I don't believe it.
Yeah.
I did not buy it. It didn't work. The good news is it is the second good news is it is being performed by people who are charismatic, and I kind of didn't have too much of a problem with it by the time we got to the end of it. But Mads Mikkelsen is great in it, and Christoph Waltz plays Cardinal Richelieu, doing kind of it feels like he showed up
Yeah.
and collected his paycheck.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder, like, most of his scenes are in that like one room, and I wonder if he wasn't on set for very many days.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he does okay.
Yeah.
He's got like 1 or 2 good scenes with Rochefort that I thought were okay.
Yep.
Mila Jovovich does her thing. which is being very pretty and physical.
Yes.
Acting's not her thing.
Sure.
Like, transporting you as a character is not really her thing.
Yeah.
She's a very beautiful, very physical actor who does great stunt work and is compelling.
Yeah.
But this milady is not super compelling.
Not super compelling. Yeah. And clearly they were setting up for a sequel.
Oh,
because
yeah.
it like they've got an airship, and then the Duke of Buckingham, who's Orlando Bloom, has an airship. Again, this is all very steampunk.
When you say an airship,
it's
you
like
mean
a blimp.
a boat?
An airboat.
Suspended below a blimp.
Yes. An airship. An airship.
Yeah. Because that's the movie starts with them stealing the plans for it.
Right. And I thought the plans were going to be the MacGuffin, but in fact, the boat itself is the MacGuffin.
Yeah.
And the Duke of Buckingham's airship it's much bigger. It's much bigger than.
Well, they steal his. They don't have any.
Sorry. They get his, and then there's one that's bigger. Whose is bigger? It's the
Richelieu makes a bigger
Richelieu
one.
makes a bigger one.
And so Rochefort has the bigger one.
Right. That's right.
While the Musketeers have Buckingham's stolen one.
Right.
So it's two airships versus each other in the third act.
Well, so anyway, Milady gets like thrown off the airship, and we think that she is dead. And then at the very, very, very end, we see her like all wet, getting like revived on Buckingham's airship, setting up for a sequel. And the airship crashes in the king's birthday party, and he's like, "Oh, you've brought me an airship. I'm so happy," because he's jealous of Buckingham for his sex appeal, and also wants to bone his own wife, and is not having a lot of success at it.
No.
That's the thing I remember from this movie.
I mean, you kind of skip the part where during the airship battle they fall on top of Notre Dame, and like the spire from Notre Dame skewers the bigger ship.
This happens,
and we have this image of oldie-timey Paris with this gigantic, stupid clock punk airship on top of Notre Dame. And I remember sitting there thinking, I like this. Here's the thing. This movie is not good.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I think it's fun. I got no beef with it.
If we had held ourselves to a stricter standard of what constituted an adaptation of the book The Three Musketeers, we would have been done with this a lot sooner. Because this bears no resemblance to the book The Three Musketeers, nor did the 2014 TV show.
I disagree. It is about a young man named D'Artagnan coming to Paris and meeting Athos, Porthos, and Aramis and becoming a musketeer.
I can't follow.
Do you remember when all the musketeers have new jobs now that they're not musketeers anymore? And Aramis is he's a meter maid? And he gives D'Artagnan a ticket because his horse shit in the street. And I just remember thinking, like, a ticket for horse shit in Paris in the 1600s? The streets flowed brown with horse shit and human shit.
All shits. They didn't discriminate. All poops.
The idea that he would give him a ticket for that, it's absolutely ridiculous. One of the things that I will do another criticism. There are jokes in this movie, but it really struck me as being very different than the Richard Lester one, where the Richard Lester one is funny all the time. Like, every scene has humor kind of laced through it. This one has no confidence in its humor, where it's like, look, here is a joke. We have hired James Corden to play Planchet, and he is a fat funny man.
He's a funny man.
He makes jokes. And we laugh at him. Ha ha ha. Don't you see that this is a joke scene now that we have signified that it is a joke? And that doesn't really do that well with me. There was a thing, I remember you getting really angry because in the course of about 5 minutes, the script, and I can't imagine this was Andrew Davis. I think this was probably Paul W.S. Anderson. In the span of 5 minutes, 3 different poker idioms are used. So at one point, someone says up the ante. Then someone refers to someone as being a wild card, and then someone else says dealer's choice.
Yeah.
And I remember you being like, the first time it happened, you were like, what? And then the second time you were like, what? And then the third time you were like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
What is this? And then I only have 2 more things about this, I promise. The whole thing ends with them trying to get the diamonds, because it is about the diamonds. So the diamonds are with the Musketeers on the stolen airship, and Rochefort and the Cardinal's guards are on the other bigger one. And they're like, okay, give us the diamonds, because they want to prevent the diamonds from getting back to the queen because of the plot we all know about. And it just struck me, this is just like the ropes in the 2001 version. They don't need the diamonds. They just need the queen to not have them. So they could just shoot the airship out of the sky, and it would be fine. And then they proceed to fire their cannons at each other constantly, but at no point do they point the cannons up at the big blimps holding the ships up. They shoot them at the boats underneath the ships.
That just wouldn't be sporting.
It doesn't. There's no such thing as a fair fight. That's what I'm saying. But my final thing. You already mentioned Buckingham. Were you ready for Orlando Bloom's entirely batshit scenery-chewing performance as Buckingham in this?
I mean, it fit with the tone of the rest of the movie.
It sure did.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, yes, I was ready for it.
It is an insane performance and an insane character. I feel like I never get to see Orlando Bloom be really campy.
Yeah.
Like, he's usually the straight man.
Yeah.
Like, Legolas is the straight man, and his character in Pirates of the Caribbean, he's the serious one, playing opposite the Jack Sparrow. And in this one, he gets to be the Jack Sparrow a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was really happy for him.
Yeah, it was probably really fun to get to wear all those weird costumes and everything.
His hair is just a sight to behold. Bottom line, I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb. You didn't like this movie, right?
I did not care for it, no.
I enjoyed it a great deal.
That's
I think
great.
it is one of the better adaptations that we watched.
Should we do some quadrants?
Let's do it. 1921 silent version. Do you think that they cared about the source material?
No.
Do you think they were successful?
No.
No? For
yes,
what it was?
Yes.
Yeah. 1935. Do you think they cared about the source material?
Not really.
Do you think they were successful?
Not really.
1939. Do you think they cared about the source material?
Weirdly, more than the other two we've talked about, but probably not. No.
I don't think they cared
No.
at all about the source material. Was it successful?
Yes.
Super fun movie. 1948. Do you think they cared about the source material?
Absolutely not.
Do you think they were successful?
Kind of.
Kind of?
Yes.
Kind of. 1966.
Yeah.
Do you think they cared about the source material?
Deeply.
Do you think they were successful?
Yeah.
It's super good.
It's really good.
Super, super good. 73, 74. Three Musketeers, Four Musketeers. Do you think they cared about the source material?
No.
I think Richard Lester did.
You think so?
I think Lester and Fraser, the screenwriter, I think they cared about it. I don't think the Salkins gave a shit about the Three Musketeers.
Sure.
But I think this was made with a lot of love for the source material.
Okay, that's fair.
Was it successful?
Yeah.
1993 Disney version. Do you think they cared about the source material?
No, but like as you pointed out, it's possible they were like contractually obligated not to make a faithful movie.
Yeah.
Which I think is really interesting.
It kind of blew this whole thing wide open.
Yeah. Did they care about the source material? I'm gonna go out on a limb and say someone did, yes.
Someone did.
Yeah.
Do you think it was successful?
Ultimately,
This is the biggest question of this whole episode. Do you think the 1993 Kiefer Sutherland, Charlie Sheen, Oliver Platt, Chris O'Donnell version of the Three Musketeers was successful as an adaptation of the Three Musketeers and as a film?
No.
Do you think the soundtrack to the Three Musketeers was successful as a movie soundtrack?
yes.
Because it's all for one and all for love. 2001's The Musketeer. Do you think they cared about the source material?
Absolutely not.
Do you think it was successful?
It was not.
Almost, but no.
Didn't make it.
2011's The Three Musketeers. Do you think they cared about the source material?
No, obviously.
Like
they
Andrew
did
Davis,
not.
I
They didn't give two shits.
I love that he wrote this, but
No.
like, no, he doesn't care about the source material.
Doesn't give a shit.
Was it successful?
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Yes.
No.
Yes.
No. No.
Yes. I guess we are at an impasse. Was it successful?
No.
Yes. Yes.
No. No.
Yes. 2014's The Musketeers. Do you think they cared about the source material?
No.
Do you think it was successful?
No.
Agreed. Well, this has been Adapt or Perish. If you'd like to find us online, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AdaptCast. You can join our groups on Facebook and Goodreads. You can find and follow me on Letterboxd, and you can listen to my other show, Multiplex Time Machine, that I host with my friend Ian. If you have anything to say that's longer than a tweet, you can always send an email to adaptorperishcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, there are 3 great ways you can do it. First, tell a friend. Second, a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice would be greatly appreciated. Third, we are on Patreon. This show will always be free, but if you become a patron, you can get access to Adapt or Perish Plus, our bonus show that releases every month between episodes of this show, and our patron-only Slack community. It's been a lot of fun, and all the details are at patreon.com/adaptcast. And it's all for one and all for love.
Bye, everybody.